Hey guys, I'm Mike.
I'm Tim.
I'm Dennis.
And this is the Board Game Rundown, and we are live from two of our basements because we cover games from top to bottom. Tim, how you doing tonight?
I thought we were done with you popping in from whatever angle, but I guess despite that, I'm still fine. I'm even better, honestly, because we got Dennis here with us, and he didn't hang up immediately when he saw you do that stuff. So
true, that's true. And I didn't even ask if he was in his basement, but judging by what's behind him, I'd say no.
Nope. We're on the top floor of a house here, so
there you go. Top to bottom, he's got the top part covered. So we're
exactly
good.
Perfect.
We are good.
So Tim,
right. Yo,
what are you working on over there?
I'm trying to make a legal character for a game that we're going to talk about a little later, but I'm failing miserably because I started to put it all together on my lanyard, and then I was like, wait a minute, there's too many things here. And then, yeah. But yeah, Dennis is here because he has, we met at Gen Con and at like a little mixer thing real late at night. I was tired as hell, but I still somehow had a lot of energy. And Dennis comes in like a fireball. Really excited and amped up about a game that he and his buddy have been working on, right? That's correct. You and a friend have co-designed this called Worn Wanderers. And it is a mobile wearable game where you're basically going to set up a character and you're going to battle randos that you find. Well, assuming that they're also wearing a character. You don't want to just... If somebody's not wearing a character,
it would be a very one-sided battle if they did not have characters. Yes,
might get weird, but you know we're not above.
What kind of battle is this, Tim?
Oh, it's a fist fight.
Challenging.
No,
okay.
I'll let Dennis
challenging people to a dance battle.
Yeah,
dance battle. What?
No. I mean, okay. So yeah, we've got our fantasy tropes in there. So if you've got the bard, right, there's no reason you can't work some magic with your dance battle. But yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting, right? So you've got a character, like a band of characters that you wear on your lanyard or your jacket around a show. And you get to wander the convention. And as you meet other players, only takes like 10, 15 minutes to play. So you can play that in there. When you're done, you've made a new friend. Or if you're waiting to pick up your badge in a will call line and you got 30 minutes to kill, you and your best friend while you're standing there in line can play. And when the line picks up and moves, you just scoot down a little bit and the setup is followed with you.
Yeah, it's actually pretty, it's pretty ingenuitive. Like I mean, whether you like this game or not, like as people are exposed to it, learn about it, I challenge them to say, oh, that's just like blah, blah, blah. Cause it's not, there's nothing like it. So
thank you.
And I say that as someone that is very intrigued, and I haven't battled anybody yet, but I've been around the pieces now for a little while and, looking at the rules and sort of been intrigued by the customization aspect of this game. And I mean, I find it fascinating. I look forward to messing around with it and actually a good way to kill some time with some randos. Hell, I might even if I've got multiple pins, give somebody else a pin off of my lanyard and be like, all right, man, like this is what we're doing, because sometimes you just start chatting with people in long lines, and if conventions are good for anything, they can be good for long lines, whether it's a food truck or, waiting to get into the hall, in the morning or the badge line. I mean, pick something.
Or the bathroom line. I mean, it's limitless, really.
Yeah.
Sad but true.
Your options are limitless. Okay, so Mike, we have totally skipped the most important part of the show?
Well, I would like to correct you and say that you totally skipped the most important part of the show because it's Wednesday!
Hey, in my defense,
Tim's gaff.
Listen,
I'll start with Dennis. What are you?
Tim,
what's that, Tim?
On?
What?
You said, Tim, what are you working on? And I was working on a lanyard, trying to assemble a playable character here. So I answered your question, sir. And you should have said, "What are you drinking?"
I could have. I got
to hold it the right way. Better than alcohol.
It is, and
That's a
safer.
takeaway, right?
Yeah, that's the takeaway.
Yeah. So Dennis, what are you drinking?
I'm a Moscow Mule guy. I swear I used to have a set of the copper mugs, and then I moved, and I don't know what happened to them. So I got to drink out of the glass. But I like my Fever Tree ginger beer and just about any cheap vodka.
I actually know what happened to my Moscow Mule mugs. My ex-girlfriend gave them to me as a Christmas gift from a couple years ago. Then she moved out and she took them.
As she should, Mike.
I'm over it, so I'm allowed to say that. I'm allowed to tell that story.
You're not worthy of such fine gifts.
I guess.
See, Aaron is exactly right.
They are good, though. I don't have them enough.
I know we're in the middle of drinks part, but to Aaron's comment about the Disney pins, right? That's a brilliant idea. We're totally on board. And we've got some people who are like, oh, I know people at Disney that I should introduce you to, because waiting in line for rides is a huge part of Disney. And why not play games while you're at it? Especially because I actually got started into my like pin collection hobby through Disney. Right. So
I've got so many Disney pins. I try to get like the cool Star Wars ones. I'm not gonna lie. My family, we love Disney stuff. We can't go every year because we're not like, wealthy, but we try to go every couple of years. And if it was just my wife and I, we could go every year. But we got 2 little kids, and it's got to be about the kids, I guess. So we go and we gotta like let them spend money on souvenirs. No, Tim, you're an adult. You don't need a $200 lightsaber. I need a $200 lightsaber so bad.
Yeah, especially you built it yourself, right?
That's exactly. Special. I did build a droid. I did when we went like 4 years ago. I built a droid because that droid shop had just opened, and I'm like, I'm building a droid. It was amazing. It still works. I built an R2, and then my daughter built a BB, not 8 because that's that character, but a BB whatever.
Sure.
And, and I'm a Star Wars nerd, so I will not apologize for that.
You and me both.
Yeah. Anyways,
I actually, it's my last pour of Iron Fish tonight. It was a rather healthy pour, so that's good. But yeah, I'll have to. We'll decide if I want to get dirty after this healthy pour. I got a backup bottle over here, so. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm almost done with this wild turkey, and I'll have to decide if I'm going to stay with the turkey on the next purchase or if I move on to less horrible pastures. No,
if you stay with the turkey, I'll just lose respect for you.
What are you talking about, man? That's a man's drink right there. Turkey on a single gigantic ice cube.
Debate what kind of man we're talking about here.
Well, a man that is self-loathing and bent on self-destruction.
Rob's the one that got me that bottle. You're seeing the end of it tonight, sir. This was good stuff though. Finished in maple syrup barrels. Oh. It's got a nice little finish to it.
I think mine was finished in a sewage barrel. Once they strained
I'm gonna drink whiskey. That's what I gotta do because I got a sweet tooth, right?
Okay.
A maple syrup finish. I could get on board with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did almost buy some Screwball. I almost bought some Screwball, that peanut butter whiskey, but I didn't want to copy.
You can't go wrong with that. Well, at least you won't put it in a dairy product. So
correct.
Tim, we're almost at the 10-minute mark. Do you want to go ahead and tell the folks at home what our topic is tonight, which was chose by our guest?
Yeah. Totally. This is a great topic, and this topic lends itself to lots of discussion and storytelling, which obviously I love talking, so it's good for me. I know Dennis and I talked for like a hot minute at Gen Con, and so here's marketing. Wild turkey. You're right, Nick. But no, tonight's topic is top 5 board game experiences. So this isn't limited to just the board games, right? This includes experiences generated because of board games. Maybe there's a board game sitting on a table while this happened to you. Maybe we're talking about board games while this happened. maybe board games opened up the door for this opportunity to happen to you. You know what I mean? This experience. Or it could just be, I was playing this game and this crazy freaking thing happened and that's what we're doing, you know, and it's whatever you want. It's, you know, how we play fast and loose here on Wednesdays. So
That's why I like these kind of topics, because we can all come up with our own very different reasonings for putting these experiences on our list. Also, Dennis, I'm curious, is there any particular reason why you picked this topic? Was there an experience you had in mind that like made you think this was the way to go?
I mean, it's more just, okay, so like this drives a lot of I do what I do, right? Like I'm a pretty community oriented person. And I have also just had a love for games since as long as I can remember, right? So combine those two things just is a topic that I talk about a lot naturally. And honestly, it was like 90% of the design seed for Worn Wanderers, right? Was I've had a bunch of life-altering experiences around games and the people I've met through games. I wanted to design a game that would give you the opportunity to meet those people, right? So if you haven't met those people who've changed your life through gaming, put this game on, go to a convention, find someone who's wearing it, have a new lifelong friend, right? Or set your life on a new direction, right? In the way that like I know games can.
You know, I was going to wait until like I got started into my part of the list, but actually the opportunities that these experiences gave me was one of the biggest factors for my list, actually. Like the opportunities that I've been given because of certain experiences. It was hard to ignore those. So that's what jumped, onto my list. So, Tim?
Yes, spiritually, Mike, our lists we are inspired, I think, the same way. And I think it also very much relates to exactly what Dennis is talking about, like the social aspect of it, right? And getting to meet people and know people and meet strangers, you know. I mean, we were all strangers to each other at one point in time. I mean, Dennis and Mike just met tonight, you know, and but through
25 minutes ago.
Well, you know, and like to that point, right? You and I, Tim, met at an event for the charity board gamer, right? Who's the guy who's just constantly changing people's lives through board games, right? Because it has that opportunity to give back, right? That charity spirit. So, that's sort of the part of games that's most important to me and the part I wanted to hone in on if I was allowed to pick anything, and I was.
Yeah, you were.
Nice.
You were, Mike. Now, before we do our list, though, let's do business first.
Ooh, what you got?
Well, first of all, I mean, business is Worn Wanderers. I want Dennis to be able to explain and talk about Worn Wanderers because we can get sidetracked and go down, you know, the rabbit hole with all our lists. And before everybody gets bored and like turns us off because of that, like I would rather, while they're still paying attention, to be able to hone in on Worn Wanderers. So Dennis, you can, I don't know, whatever you want, your elevator pitch, you know, whatever, however you want to explain it, I will just shut my yapper and let you go.
Thank God. That's how we roll.
It's true.
So we've already hit on a lot of it, right? If you're just tuning in, Worn Wanderers is a fully wearable strategy game, right? You can see I've got my lanyard on with what could very easily be my show badge for a convention I'm going to, or you know, even my car key lanyard if I'm going to my local game store. You have 6 pins that you can wear, or you know, alternatively, we've got this great pin board with characters that have level 1, level 2, level 3 character cards and some loot. The goal of the game, right, is players take turns attacking one character to another to try and defeat their power cards. You rotate that out of the way. That's the level 2 power card. It's better, right? And once you defeat the level 2 and level 3 power card, you reveal that loot. And the goal of the game is to be the first person to score 6 loot if you have 6 pins, or 4 loot if you have 4 pins. So it plays very simply. It's an elegant rule set, if I may say so. Tim, you said it doesn't compare to a whole lot of other things. And I'm excited to say that's really just because of the design limitations, right? When we started with a game that you could wear, that was a challenge. There was definitely like, how do we present information that changes and, keep it from being too finicky to where people have to remove pins. But yeah, this is what we ended up with, right? You've got characters with hold on, let me see if I can avoid the glare there, right? You've got an attack. Here, I'm gonna adjust the lighting here for a moment. Right, you've got an attack on a character and a defense on a character. They attack for that much, and that is their health. So, for example, right, if we had these two characters attacking each other, Aaron Noya here would do 12 damage to Danton Myrtle. Danton Myrtle will do 7 damage back to Noya when he is attacked, and that is enough to beat both of their health values. So those cards would get defeated, right? And reveal our level 2 cards. You've also got some abilities that come into play, right? Like ranged characters can deal damage before characters without ranged. So even though he's got a small amount of health, right, he will bow and arrow you or dance battle. Because as I mentioned, this is our bard. He'll get you with the power of magical dance before you get up to him.
Yeah, boy.
Right. So it's strategically depth, right? Like as Tim had mentioned, there is customization options, right? Characters have some color restrictions that we call heraldry, right? You can see, the mirrored camera kills me. It's very helpful for reading, right? But yeah, we've got black, blue, yellow, yellow. So this character is using black, blue, and yellow cards in their build. But if you have alternate cards or other characters that you want to swap into your team, you're welcome to. So yeah, it's fully customizable, lots of replayability, very deep strategy for a game that's only 10 or 15 minutes. And we've had a blast making it. A lot of people have had a blast playing it. So I'm excited to get it into everybody's hands. We'll be doing a Kickstarter soon. Tentative launch date is March 8th, but just discussions today and the day prior, we may be pushing that to March 24th. Just for reference, that's either we'll be launching at Dice Tower West or we'll be launching at PAX East. Both of which are shows we'll be at. So if you happen to be at either of those shows, come find our booth and say hello, and we'll have some cool exclusive launch goodies for you.
See, that's the stuff that people want to know. That is the stuff people want to know. Oh, we got the full 42 in the house. Those are professional derailers, and it is Mike. So
he's starting early tonight.
He is starting early. The Rangers must not be playing. He's a diehard hockey guy. And so
what's the name of your company?
Yes. So we're Claromancy Games. Thank you. Important part that I skipped. Claromancy Games. Oh, like I said, it's gonna kill me. You can find us at claromancygames.com. This is our first published game. We've done some consults before, and just as far as credentials go, I've been in and around the board gaming industry for a little over a decade now. But we'll get into that a little bit in the stories. I don't want to give it all away up front. How I got involved and how it's kind of set the course of my life towards this project. But yeah, that's me, Brody Kelly, who's the co-designer of the game. And then Ryan Havdallah and Kalani Robinson are both also partners in the company. So if you see any of us at shows, come and say hello.
I think I met you and Kalani, right? Was it Kalani that was with you at Gen Con? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
See, I do remember things. Mike, I remember things.
That one was late. I will give it to you. That was a very late little party we were at there.
That was late. And was it the Saturday of Gen Con? I feel like we'd already been going for a while. It was I
want to say it was in the latter half of the month.
I was
right. Gen Con. Gen Con just seems like it goes for forever. I
don't even think I had the energy to go to that mixer. I was so worn out. So hence I did not end up meeting you that night because I was there as well.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I get it. I'm a big extrovert, right? Gen Con is like my Christmas every year because it's me and 40,000 of my closest friends all talking games. So it really amps me up. But I know for for like Brody's a bit of an introvert, and he was like, "I'm going back to the room. It's 9:00, right? Like, peace."
Yeah, all my other friends are cowards and dipped out. You know,
Nice.
I'm like you, Dennis. I like to go. I like to mingle amongst the Vox Populi. I like the voice of the people. I'm in it to win it. I love hanging out, and it's always a good time.
Yeah.
Man, Rob hitting below the table here. It's a bit uncalled for.
Listen, Mike it doesn't do enough recreational drugs, I guess, to make it all the way through Gen Con nonstop. We don't endorse that here. We do not endorse that.
Wow.
You will 100%. Like, I mean, you get worn out going to these shows though, right? Like, I mean, one of the friends who I like got me into it always calls he calls it con plague, right? You come away from con like under the weather, without a doubt, right? It usually hits around like Saturday, right? You go and he always gets a secret
like
menu
an emergency.
The cold buster or something, right? Which is like half tea and half coffee to like, you know, clear. It's gross. It's disgusting, but it actually does wonders if you've been at the convention for a few days and you're starting to like get run down.
Half tea and half coffee. Wow.
I do like a lot of vitamin C, you know, while I'm there.
Oh, smart.
You know, and then drink a lot of Red Bull, which I'm already, I'm already high energy, which Mike knows because he deals with me pretty regularly.
Dealing is the primo word there.
I'm understanding, you know, our encounter a little bit more, knowing you were all hopped up on Red Bull at the time.
Just ready to go. But yeah, man, I'm excited. I was really glad, like, because we kind of exchanged email addresses, you know, at the thing. And then, you know, after a while, it's sort of like, you know, you get back home and the dust starts to settle after a convention. And you're like, I talked to so many people. Who's actually going to reach back out to me? You know what I mean? Like, you know, because you and I are both doing the same thing, right? We're networking.
Yeah.
You know, we are shaking hands and kissing babies, you know, trying to meet as many people as we can and introduce ourselves. Hey, I'm a real person, you know, like, you know, hopefully you like us. And, you know, and so like, it's all about, you know, just not even networking, just meeting people, you know, just actually meeting people, because you never know, right? Like let's just say you never reached back out to me. I see you at another Gen Con. I'm like, oh yeah, I saw your game a while ago. You know what I mean? Or whatever. We could randomly meet, sit down and play in a board game and be like, oh, crazy. You know, we ran into each other 5 years ago at a different Gen Con, you know, like whatever happened. I don't know, you know, and, it's just like a small world. It's a whole universe of just sliding doors, right? Just different things can happen, you know, and, but then when you reached out, you know, and then we kind of like started figuring stuff out and like nailing it down. I was like, all right, this is going to be cool. Like, I'm excited. And, it seemed also right. Like, cause I remember your energy sort of like meeting mine, you know, and like, okay, like, this is a dude that like we could talk to, you know what I mean? And like do stuff with, you know, and like, cause like, even if you weren't doing Worn Wanderers, like just from your vibe and your energy, it's like, oh man, like just have a fun guest to come on and talk about a board game topic. Like, let's do it. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly.
But, so Tim, was that your was that your unintentional segue into the list here?
I was wondering.
Or I'm a master. Or I'm a master at it. That's just why I'm the host of this show.
Intentional segue.
Look at that.
I just have to do all the back end stuff to get it going. As long as that's done, Tim can take it from there.
That is true. I have like a child that wanders into the room in the middle of a conversation.
And just jumps right into his list without warning anybody. So let's go ahead and start with number 5. I was going to try to make it more seamless than that, but that's okay.
Do you want me to go first? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'll go last.
Do you want to do honorable mentions last, or should I just knock one out right now?
it kind of seems like that was a baited question. So if you need to knock one out.
I'm just answering Mike's question.
Oh, finished off my high dollar iron fish here, brewed in Michigan, distilled in Michigan.
And he's got a Tito's fueled Moscow Mule. So, you know what? Actually, Mike, I will save my.
Wow, even Rob agrees, and he's saving it.
Just to avoid any potential crossover. I don't want to steal one off your list by accident.
Oh.
I don't want to steal one off your list by accident.
Okay. I mean, if I end up bringing it up, then
how awkward is this going to be if one of you puts like a very an experience with both of you, and the other one just completely leaves it off the list? Right? Like, that was important to me. You're all on your own there.
It wasn't. I mean, it was meaningful, but it was more of like a 25, than a 5.
25.
All right. So I'm gonna start way back, and they're not all going to be chronological, but I'm gonna just go to a very formative board game experience. When I was a kid, I don't know, this was like 1990, maybe. So Dennis may not have been born. Probably was not born yet.
92.
92. Okay, my sister was born. My youngest sister was born in 90. So, I'm an old man. So I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12 when this happened. We're at I don't remember if it was like a Kmart or a Target or something in Louisville, Kentucky. And my mom bought me Hero Quest, the board game. And that was like the first hobby style board game that I ever played before it was even really a hobby style. I mean, there were board games. Don't get me wrong. I know, I'm aware Cosmic Encounter came out in like 1979, and other games were around. But this was like the first one that I was ever exposed to that I was like, wait a minute, you don't just like roll and move. And then like, oh, you have characters that level up and you play through a campaign. And then, and yeah, Mike, you're killing me, but we'll see you in a bit. We get it, Mike. You're super important, and you work for Third World Studios. We get it. You're a game producer and developer and designer. You're better than all of us. No, I love Mike. He's awesome. So that's why I could say that. But no, man, we bought this. I got Hero Quest as a kid. Like immediately went home, and like my mom and one of my sisters played it with me, and not the one that was born in 1990, Dennis, just so you know. And we played through, and then like my mom's like, I'm done playing, and I made my sister play like 3 more missions, and then she got tired of it, and then I went through like the whole dang campaign book. And then like later that week, we went back out to the store, and I bought like 2 of the expansions for it, and I just like became obsessed with this game. Like I'd play it by myself. If anybody else would play, I would play it with them, but if they didn't want to play, I could just play with myself. Just boop, 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 going through the campaign, doing the thing. I didn't care that I could see the book and I knew how the map was going to go. Like, I just wanted to like level up my characters. And it was really my first taste of like a D&D or a dungeon crawling, style of game. And it had its hooks in me ever since, right? The gaming hobby. So
original
that
solo mode.
That is my number 5. Yeah, that was that. I don't care. I'm a lonely nerd. I'll play games by myself if I have to. But yeah, that's my number 5. And we're gonna throw it to Dennis now. No pressure.
I was gonna say, can I cut off Mike, because I think my segue is perfect. Right, a little later in the game, not Hero Quest, right? But this.
Oh yeah.
This is my number 5.
Yeah.
I was, I think, 7 years old. So, 99, for anybody doing the math from earlier. And my dad had gotten Dragon Quest, right? Which, yeah, like, I think we got this at like Hobbytown USA, right? Sure. Or some, like, there wasn't a whole lot of, it was a hobby, hobby game back in the day. But we had look at that, this was very much us, right? It was my dad and me and my sister, who was like 4 at the time, like very young. Maybe I was 8 and he was 5, but like, and we played Dragon Quest together. We got the map out, and he walked us through it. Just super formative, but in particular, it sticks out in my mind because as we're running through the adventure, we come to a room, and my character opens the door, and there are monsters in the room, like a lot of monsters. He does the whole description, and it's like, that's a lot. Like, I don't know that you can take them all on. Do you want to like try and close the door and run away, or do you want to fight them, right? And like, what 7-year-old is afraid of death? So you're like, I'm gonna charge in, and I charged in, and like my sister and my dad backed me up and ran into the room, but my character ended up dying.
Nice.
I just got demolished in this room. And I was so upset, right? I was like crying and like throwing a hissy fit. And my mom was like, why don't just give him his character back? Like, just bring his character back to life. And my dad was like, no, he's got to learn that in life, like, there are consequences. which in retrospect, I love, right? Like, it was a really great teachable moment brought to you by board games, right? And a formative experience for me. Right. Like, it was emotional, and like, I was upset as a 7-year-old, which I think is, fine and appropriate, but
100%. Now it's embarrassing when Mike as a 40-year-old does it. But,
yeah, I know. That's true. It's a common occurrence as well.
But yeah, no, similar vein, right? That's kind of like how I got started into it, and a formative experience. But also, I just liked that it was a relevant teaching tool, like my dad was able to take an important life lesson and work it into Dragon Quest, right? Dungeons and Dragons. And I think it really has that potential for all of us.
Oh, 100%. I had to teach my daughter to be a good loser, right? Playing games with her, my son, we're still working on it. It's a little harder, but he's coming around. But yeah, 100%. That is an amazing thing. And it's super, like, to me, a very cool thing about board games is, like, I get a lot of games just so I can play them with my.
Filling in for Tim, he gets games that he can play with his family and his kids.
Oh,
and his
I don't
wife
think that's really going with it at all.
And those teachable moments. Oh. Okay. Whoa. Weird sounds.
You get the full experience when I buffer. No, that's it. You finished it off. It took you a second. You should jump in faster next time, Mike. You should.
Well, yeah. All right. I know.
But yeah.
Okay.
No, Dennis, that's a great one. It's great. I love it.
I didn't go that far back with any of mine. I did play Hero Quest as a kid, not nearly as avidly as Tim did, apparently. But I was an only child, so it was whatever games I could get my parents to play. And so, yeah, it usually wasn't anything incredibly in-depth. Hero Quest was probably the most in-depth thing I played as a kid. And then I kind of really didn't revisit them other than random party games until 10 years ago. And that's where I'm going with my number 5. That's what I call my gateway experience. And it was just my uncle that just decided to show me, like, where the board game hobby was at. And so he had already shown me Marvel Legendary, and I liked it. And we had played Descent a couple times, remind me of Hero Quest, and I liked it. And we played like Dixit. But then one night he said he had met a group and they were playing games, and one he liked so much that he went and bought it. He sold some Yu-Gi-Oh cards and bought a bunch of board games. And the game that he taught me was Lords of Waterdeep. Yeah. And that was just the game, man. That was like, yeah, those other ones were good, but just when I played Lords of Waterdeep, that was that official game that sucked me in. I think what it was is, like, I've been a video gamer for years, and my kind of games, my first question is there a skill tree? Like, I want some customization of my character and their build. Now, I don't necessarily play board games that do that, but it makes me think of every time I play a board game that I enjoy, like Lords of Waterdeep, I want to play it differently each time. Like, one time I want to go for the strategy that gives me all the money and the black cubes. But a different time I want to go with the strategy that gives me all those intrigue cards and extra orange cubes. And I just think of every time I play a video game, action RPG or RPG, I want to do a totally different build every time I play back through the game.
Yeah.
It's all about making the experience feel different by trying a different strategy in the game. And the Lords of Waterdeep was the first one where I was like, oh, you can do that in a board game too? Like I could play this 50 times and not see the same combination of cards every time I play it. And so like we played Lords of Waterdeep and it was just awesome. I had a blast. Then we played Seasons, and I think that game's good too. It's not one of my favorites by any means. But after we were done with Seasons, I asked to play Lords of Waterdeep again. And so we did. And like to this day, it's extremely rare that I'll play a 2-hour game twice in one night, you know? So like that told you how bought in I was on that specific game and this version of board games that I hadn't seen before, which, you know, some might call a Euro, worker placement, all that kind of stuff, which I had not seen before Lords of Waterdeep. And so it was the game that sucked me in. It was the first game I bought for myself. I started teaching my friends, and like I knew when I bought Lords of Waterdeep, I'm like, I need to find more games like this one. So that is my number 5.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, we are on to Tim's number 4.
Okay, so I was kind of torn. This is going to be a really weird story, but sort of board game related.
On par.
Yeah. It's board game adjacent. It's this crazy story of how I met Bob. Okay, because here's the thing about board games and tabletop games and things like that is it opens up such crazy ways that you will meet people that then become lifelong friends. And this is again, right? I was talking about like sliding door events, right? You know, all it has to do is one thing to go like slightly differently and your life takes a completely different course. So back in the day, early 2000s, I worked in a restaurant, like it was Applebee's, whatever. If you got Applebee's around here, you know what they are. Anyways, I had one of my best friends from high school. We played like D&D and Cyberpunk and Magic and the Star Wars card game back then, you know, like all those games, right? We played all these games.
Yeah.
We were getting ready to run a Cyberpunk game, and we were like, oh, we need another guy. And so it was like my one friend, Pete, who I still hang out with. And then there was a guy that I worked with that was like, oh, you like D&D, and his name was Matthew. And we're like, yeah. And I was like, actually, you know, we're looking for a dude for like our Cyberpunk game. And he's like, awesome. Yeah, I'll play. Can I bring my buddy Bob? And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Sure. So they all come over to our house, and this dude, Matthew, we accidentally called Matt once, and he's like, I'm not a fucking rug. My name is Matthew, not Matt. And we're all like, and I only use that language to demonstrate how shocked we were by his rudeness. Turns out the dude was like a total dick. So we just kind of like, he just stopped coming, and Bob's like, I didn't really know that guy like that well. Can I still come? And we're like, well, yeah, you know, please come. And see, Bob's gonna back me up. And so Bob kept coming and playing games with us. And, you know, Bob was into Magic. Bob was into, you know, like role-playing games. And then Bob and I got like, basically once I started getting into the board game hobby, like really, really getting it in, I like grabbed Bob. I'm like, Bob, you must play these with me. And, you know, Bob and I just jumped in head first, you know, pretty close to the same time. And I've never heard from that Matthew dude ever again. I've never seen him. If I have, I didn't even know it. But that dude changed my life forever. So it's crazy.
Tim, you will now address me as Michael because I am not an instrument for recording audio.
Okay, Michael. Okay, Michael.
Don't, please. Only my mom and dad do that.
Oh, and Bob's never heard from him again either. So
nice. Sounds like a winner.
Yeah. He's probably really successful somewhere, and we're here toiling away in our basements.
And Bob's like, you'll call me Robert, not something you do for apples.
Well,
All right.
right.
All right, I'm done.
Well, yeah.
Not really.
So anyway,
I'll be
no,
looking
you're
for
never
more
done.
names in the chat. You're right. I'm never done.
You're never done.
Alrighty, so is that me? Or are we jumping to Mike?
I think that's you
yeah,
now,
it's
Dennis.
you. I'll be last.
We'll keep the rotation. We're gonna go in order, not order of importance, because you would be first. Then
Wow.
But Mike would
I'm
definitely
honored.
be last. So if we were going in order of importance, so we're doing that.
All right.
You're getting support.
So my number 4 is actually something we were talking about a little bit in the green room before we hit the go live button. So I've moved a decent amount in my life. Right, first 7 years I was in Massachusetts until I was 14. I lived in upstate New York, and then my dad got a new job. We moved to the Midwest, specifically. Went from like Albany area, which, like if you know New York, it's not New York City, but like it's a pretty big city. And we moved to Madison, Indiana, which was a very tiny town in the Midwest, and culturally something that I was not prepared for. Right, we just had this whole other like speed of life to get used to. Where people in New York, for the most part, were very curt. And didn't like if you my dad characterized it like if you run into your neighbor at a grocery store in New York, you'll say, how are you doing? And they'll say, good. You good. And you go your separate ways. Right. And then we moved to Madison, Indiana, and it was, how are you doing in a grocery store? What is an hour-long conversation, right? About like how the dog was, it's okay, my daughter was top of the class, right? And it was just like, as impatient New Yorkers, we did not jive with that at first. It was very like, okay, this is weird. And especially like I had just moved after my freshman year of high school, which is not a like super great time to move.
No.
Like I was really kind of getting in the groove of things. I really just like turned that awkward corner from middle school into high school and, established myself, and it's like, oh, start over, right? You're going to move into a new place with a bunch of people who've known each other their whole life, and you won't know anyone. And there was a store in Madison, Indiana that I believe is still there. I check in on it every so often, called Urban Vikings, that just became like a home away from home. Right. Ironically, I had a friend who was really into games with me in New York, but there wasn't a ton we could play because like D&D, we found awkward with like 2 people, right? Because you have one person who's the dungeon master and one role player. We played what we could with 2 players, but we hadn't had that exposure. And then suddenly there's this shop, right? And it becomes like my parents drop me off like Saturday morning. Right. And I will get a ride home from one of them like Saturday at 1 a.m. And it just kind of really became like a coming of age thing for me, to where like I moved to a new town and I had this like built-in group of friends. I could just go to this place for my weekends. Right. And we really connected. I got all my props here. The World of Warcraft TCG had just come out. So like they were really big into that. I'd never played World of Warcraft in my life. Right. But like we had some really amazing like raids and, like multiplayer games. And we played the crap out of this game. We played a ton of World of Warcraft trading card game back in the day. And it was, I'm getting an echo on myself. Pardon. But yeah, it kind of like it opened my eyes to local game stores as this super important place in my life. Like they've really become, something that's defined my life, and that like I've moved cross country many times up to this point, like 4 times. And every time I've done that, I've just been able to go to the local game store, right? And say like, hey, when are you guys playing X, right? Y, Z, whatever. And show up, and like there's people there who have a shared interest, right? And I get to meet with them and connect with them over that. And that's how I've made a lot of lifelong friends. And so, yeah, Urban Vikings in Madison, Indiana was nice. That experience for me. Just showing up as a 14-year-old with no friends in a new town halfway across the country and just being like, wow, this is it. this is what the rest of my life is going to look like.
Yeah, and then our buddy Mike from the Full 42, he's from Syracuse.
Go Orange.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta love the built-in friends that a board game hobby brings you, right? You can go to any game store. It's a safe haven, right? And you can go in there and
100%. I can't echo that enough, right? Like, especially, I think there's a lot of places where people aren't entirely allowed to be themselves, right? But like, I don't think board game stores are like our hobby generally is that place, right? Like, it's a very progressive hobby, and that's cool, right? We're accepting of like a very wide range of people, and like, even if, especially I was bullied a lot in school, right? Like, I could go to this place, right? And it was just a welcoming, accepting place where for the most part, everyone else was kind of like on the outs, but we accepted each other and lifted each other up and were each other's friends, right? It definitely, this hobby like has that going for it. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about the hobby, man, is just friends everywhere. Friends everywhere. And when Mike's done coughing, he can do his number 5.
Okay.
4.
Yeah. Yeah, my number 4 actually has to do with the first group that I met. So right on par there. So so I buy Lords of Waterdeep, and like my uncle lives 2 hours away. He's the one that got me into this hobby. So like I realistically I could only go visit him maybe every couple months. And like that was my only exposure to board games. I started trying to buy some, teach my friends. They were enjoying them, but probably not at the rate of consumption that I was wanting. So I started looking for a group, and I went to Board Game Geek, and I discovered Board Game Geek very early into the hobby, and I started looking for guilds. And sure enough, I found a guild in the small town I was working in at the time, and it was a group that met every Thursday. And I just messaged the guild runner, and I'm like, hey, I'm just a guy that really wants to explore this hobby more. I'd love to meet a new group. Feel totally awkward asking, but I got no leads here. And sure enough, he's like, yeah, come on over. And they've had an established group that's been meeting. At that point, they had already been meeting like 4 or 5 years. And to this point, they still meet. And that group's got to be going on like 10 years running. So this was my first group, and they were just like all the nicest guys. Like all of them, like I still communicate with a lot of them, even though I moved away from there. I remember the first time I went there, and it's no shock that I'm a big fan of social deduction. That's something we talk about a lot, me and Dan especially. Tim enjoys them as well. I know Tim's not a fan of the Resistance, but it was like the first one I played and enjoyed. And I'm like, oh, this bluffing thing is awesome. And I know looking back, it's not like the most amazing game, but it was a first game where I was like, ooh, lying to people's fun. So that first night of this new group, we sat and played One Night Ultimate Werewolf for like an hour straight. Yes. And I'm like, I love bluffing people. Oh my God. And this group, like, that's what they like to do. They like to, before they start into their other games, they'll sit and play One Night Ultimate Werewolf for sometimes 30 minutes to an hour. And so the first couple months I went to this group, every week it would be like 5, 6, 7, 8 games of Werewolf before even getting started. And then the first game I played with that group was Navigador, which is an old Matt Gertz game, Concordia designer, one of my favorite games of all time. But Navigador is kind of like a little rondel game, and you're moving a ship around and getting actions and stuff. But that was my first night of like a new group, and I had no idea what to expect because I'd never met them before. Totally looked them up on BGG, playing an hour of One Night Ultimate Werewolf would probably make Bob think he's in purgatory, but I loved every minute of it, and I still love One Night Ultimate Werewolf to this day. I love those rowdy bluffing games. I do. So anyway, that I just, because of that group, like I mean, none of the other stuff I've done would be like even possible. Like
Mhm.
I wouldn't have been introduced to like hundreds of games they introduced me to. I wouldn't have been invited to the origins that I went to with those guys. I wouldn't have went alone. And my buddies still aren't as into games as I am. They won't go to cons. We'll talk about when those friends changed later. That I found friends willing to go to cons, but not my first. My first group was the one that really opened the doorway for me. So
yeah, well, and in particular too, I think that's such an interesting like theme of these stories, right? Is like your life takes these paths, right, that you don't really expect it to, and you look back 10 years and you're like, what if I hadn't had that? Like, what if I hadn't messaged that one person online? Right? What if I hadn't had that one chance encounter?
yeah,
Right. And you can't even fathom how different your life would look if not for that like one chance encounter. Right. And for me, those have like overwhelmingly been in and around games. Right. And that's like why gaming means so much to me. Right. And like why it's part of my core identity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like this was before I even realized that people just gathered up at stores and played games. Like I really had no idea. I was like, okay, it's just people hanging out at their houses. Like, well, wait, where do you get these games from? So just total ignorance to where the hobby was when I found it at that point in time. I completely admit I had no idea how big the rabbit hole was when I started.
So to date you, like what period are we talking here? Right? Like,
that was about 10 years ago. That's when I got started into this level of the hobby.
All right. So yeah, like board games were established around then, right? Yeah, they're definitely like that's nice, right? Because I mean, if you go back far enough, it definitely was just like people at homes, right? Like I remember, and this is I guess an honorable mention. Now that I'm full on rambling, stealing the show here.
It's a wonderful life. I'm just saying.
Yu-Gi-Oh tournament at Toys R Us, right? When I was like 9, because like there weren't stores that held Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, right? It just was like, this is very much a new thing. So there definitely was kind of like a Wild West era. And I came in on like the tail end of it, right? Of like, late 90s, early 2000s, right? Like there wasn't a ton of like public support for this. It was very much like a thing that you kind of had to know someone who ran it at their house to do. So yeah, like, I mean, we're pretty blessed at this point, 20 years down the line. And like, even small towns can have a shop that runs stuff like this. You can still go play like Friday Night Magic.
Yeah. Yeah. We are really lucky. The game store that I still hang out on the regular and do the show out of, I have been going to since the mid 90s easily. But I've gone there for different things. I've gone there to play Warhammer. I've gone there to play Magic. I've gone there to play board games, as my gaming like hobby, evolved as I evolved through the hobby. Right.
Oh yeah. 100%.
But just so lucky because, and this is sort of a tangent as well, is there's a game store that I used to go to first called the Griffin here in town. And the owners are the sweetest people. And they were great. And I used to go there and buy role-playing game books and look at the board games and be like, who would pay $50 for a board game? This is insanity. Oh, you sweet summer child, the things you do not know. But then later on, when I got into board gaming a little bit and I knew that they had an upstairs room. And so I was like, I'm going to go try this out. And this is the one sort of negative experience I've had, is that it was very cliquish. I went up there. It was very cliquish. I was not confident enough with my, like, not in the hobby yet. I was still kind of like dipping a toe. And I was just like, I don't know how to insert myself into any of these games. All of these games look very complicated when really now looking back, they were probably playing like Stone Age or something that was, that now, as an experienced gamer, you'd be like, oh, that's simple, but when you don't know, if you've only played a couple of things and you're like, I don't even know what this is. And nobody was like super outgoing, like there was just sort of like some eye contact and some, hey, but that did actually form the way I comported myself in the future. But that's another story for further down on the list.
Well, yeah, and so just a quick segue off of that, right? I mean, we talk a lot about like how great this hobby is, right? And how people like welcome you, but like I do want to shout out like that is a particular like type of person who like puts a lot of effort in. Right, like this hobby wouldn't be as amazing as it is without that like
the ambassadors.
We could 100% be talking about a completely different hobby that evolved differently into like cliques where you're not welcome, right? But like there's this presence of gamer, this like subtype of gamer that really goes out of their way to like welcome newbies in, right? When everyone at the D&D table is kind of like, oh, you don't know that rule, they're like, oh, let me show you, how it works, right? And so like shout out to those people, right? I think all of the experiences we're talking about here would not have been possible without that type of person, right? The person who puts Mike's game group online in the hopes of attracting new people, right? And is welcoming in attitude, right?
Yes.
I like not to like market too much because I don't want to be like obnoxious about it. But that is one of Claromancy's like core principles that we built our business on. Is like we want to support. We call them champions, right? The people who take that community and like open it up. Right, those people who welcome others in, right? Take their own time and energy to like put games on, right? And make this a welcoming and opening experience. Because like, yeah, we wouldn't be here without some person back down the line who did that for us.
Yeah, I mean, Mike is famously a gatekeeper, and we had to beat that out of him. But yeah, I mean, I'm all about the champions and the experience that those people, provide.
Oh,
it's good thing you weren't drinking, Dennis. I would have had you. That would have got him.
Oh yeah, that would have been the spit take.
Oh wow. It is. We'll talk more about this later, but it's because of my excellent new guy to the group experiences that I try to be that and more when I invite new people to my house. Like I want people to feel welcomed. Mi casa, su casa. I don't care about anything, but let's have fun and play games. Like, leave your ego at the door. Let's just have fun.
Yes.
But okay, I think we're on to Tim's number 3.
See, we made Dennis want to leave. It was so bad.
You called me a gatekeeper, and he's like, "Wow."
Yeah.
No, don't worry, you guys. I was out of ginger beer. I'm
good man.
Good drinks. It's a free drink podcast.
That's all right. That is all right.
Nice. I'm on to bottle number 2. I might end up finishing off Jack Daniel's Rye tonight too. I don't know. Getting spicy.
And that thing was full when we started. I'm just kidding. No,
I didn't realize you caught all those side sips.
Yeah.
Right.
I live. What do you think I'm doing when I'm buffering? I'm just got my secret camera on in your game room and just watching you.
Quick, cut
now it's just getting weird.
Like, drinking.
Yeah. All right. My number 3 is actually going to be a very specific experience I had playing a board game. This is just too amazing of an experience to leave off of the list. And it was just so much fun. And I love to just brag about having had this opportunity. So, Dennis, you don't know, but Mike knows my brother-in-law, Patrick Olmstead. He's a lawyer in Indianapolis. And he is very, very tied into the game industry. And I mean, it's not his primary focus of law, but he's a diehard board gamer. He and my older sister are the ones that really got me into the hobby proper. And I've learned so much from them. And we were at a convention. We were at Geekway to the West a couple years back. And Patrick gave me the finest compliment he could ever give me. He says, "Tim, I've got a game tonight with Stephen Bonacore and Jeffrey Engelstein and somebody else who was just like a friend of theirs. And I want you to come and play because for some reason people seem to like you." And I was like, okay, like I'm down, you need a wingman, we're going to go. And if you don't know Stephen Bonacore, he was at the time the head of Stronghold Games. It was before he retired. Now he's the podfather of gaming. And then Jeffrey Engelstein is he was the founder of the Ludology podcast. He designed Space Cadets. His daughter is one of the designers behind all the Aeon's End Legacy stuff. Like, dude at the time was writing a book on like board game mechanics and board game design, like so cerebral. Like that dude has forgotten more things about board games than I will ever, even be exposed to. And we're going to sit down and we're going to play The Godfather, the Eric Lang one, right? And we're playing and Bonacore is just like full on Italian New Yorker, right? And he's just, he's drinking and smoking cigars, you know what I mean? And just like talking so much trash while we're playing. And I'm just having the best time. I'm just like a fly on the wall while they're just going. And then every once in a while, like you bump off somebody's character because it's a pretty cutthroat, area control game. And especially if I hit Bonacore, I made some smart ass Italian, like remark like, hey, nothing personal. It's just business, just things like that, just to jab him and get him riled up. And it was so much fun. And he was so game for that, and we just had the best freaking, 2 hours of playing that game. It's a great game. I love it anyways, but I don't know that I'll ever have an experience that will top that playing that game specifically. And, I was just lucky, for some reason, Patrick thinks people like me enough that he invited me to go along and be a good wingman.
Board game wingman.
Dude, it was incredible. It was incredible. I felt like, you're in there with giants of the industry, and I didn't have a show then, like I wasn't anybody, like I'm still not anybody, but I didn't have a show. It's not like I'm there trying to promote my show or do anything like that. Like I'm just a diehard board gamer. And it was nuts, man. It was so good. It was so good. It was so wild. We hung out for like 3 hours after, just BSing about Game of Thrones and board games and mechanics and where the industry was going and all kinds of stuff. And yeah, Aaron, you ain't wrong, man. There's so many names I dropped right there. But
wouldn't that technically be Aaron Mo-Or?
Yeah, I think it is Aaron Mo-Or.
Mo-Or.
Yeah, man, it was crazy.
I saw this question. I was going to address it because I'm usually the one that's always playing music. If there's games at my house, I'm just not a silence person. I don't like silence. And even though if people are gaming, like there's talking and whatnot, I still just can't handle silence. So I got to have something background. Usually I've got selected playlists of just regular music that I think
lots of Whitney Houston and Tony Braxton.
Usually classic rock
Spice
with
Girls.
Black Keys mixed in, or just the Black Keys discography is a great start for any board game marathon. But yeah, usually a classic rock list, not too heavy, not too mellow, somewhere in the middle. I'll sometimes play ambient RPG music too. Yeah, I always like to have music playing at my house when we're playing.
This is actually a brilliant segue for my next part because you have to be careful, like what kind of playlists you curate for these events. Because one of my all-time favorite games is the Arkham Horror LCG.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. You've played it.
Oh yeah.
Like short of like Magic the Gathering, it's probably the game I've played the most in my life. And oh my god, like if you want to get into ambient music problems, there we go. Got it handy. My man Tim.
I even have Barkham Horror.
Oh no! Oh, that's like the one piece of my collection that I do not own. I'm so jealous right now. That's about the biggest flex you could have as an Arkham player, right?
Yeah.
Your copy of Arkham Horror. That's amazing. But yeah, no. I googled, right, like either people have like Call of Cthulhu playlists, which are that's like the RPG like Lovecraftian thing. But I've put that music on during game nights of Arkham Horror and come across like truly disturbing tracks of music, right? So like you don't want to go too ambient because one time there was like it was like the whispered testimony of a serial killer, like to music while we're playing, and everyone just kind of like has this realization simultaneously, like maybe 30 or 40 seconds into the song, and we look up and we're all like, we got to change this. This is a little too immersive, right? Like it's not okay. It's very disturbing. So yeah, definitely like ambient music can help to a point. There's a point where you don't want to be immersed, and if anything, it's probably the Arkham genre of games.
Man, that's wonderful. I just want to answer Andrew's question for Mike. Is he's watching it right now? You can't see it. There's a TV behind the camera.
It's back there.
We're not even on screen. It's Jack and Rose.
It's just Jack and Rose. He wants to be painted like a French girl.
I saw it. I saw it in theaters, so one confirmed. I might have watched it one other time after that, so twice. I don't know what he's leading towards with that question. That is a very dated question.
I think it was because I said you had a lot of Whitney Houston, so that would also imply potentially some Celine Dion on that soundtrack as well.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's the segue into my next story, right? Is Arkham Horror, because that I'm not gonna lie, this one's gonna take it down a little bit because this is me, my vulnerable moment.
No, do it. Safe space.
So, yeah, Arkham has been a consistent thing for me. I got introduced to it. I was a resident assistant in college, and one of my residents was like, "Hey, I just got this game. You like games, right?" And we played the core set of Arkham Horror, which, like, if you are at all familiar with modern Arkham, like the card pool is huge and like the power level is increased a lot. So like playing back in the day with just the core set was challenging, but since then, like so Claromancy, right? Sorry, Claromancy. God, that mirror on the camera always throws me. Claromancy is largely started by me and Brody, who's like the rock of the company. And Brody and I worked at the same programming firm. Found out he played Arkham, and he would come over like most Friday nights, and we get some games of Arkham in. And to this day, like we've stayed amazing friends, right, to the point where we've started Claromancy together, just through our shared love of games. And there was a point where I was living in Boise. This was in Boise, and I was like not in a great place personally, right? I was honestly pretty miserable. Like I had moved to Boise, which was, most of my family was still in Indiana at the time. And I had moved to Boise as part of to be with my wife at the time's family. And I had gotten married really young. It wasn't a great relationship. Definitely some serious problems there. And like, I was very unhappy as a person. And there was one birthday where my ex and I were separated at the time. She had moved into her own place, and like, I just didn't feel like celebrating a ton, didn't have a lot of things lined up. It was just kind of going to be me alone on my birthday. But it just so happened that it fell on a Friday night. Right. And Friday night was when Brody came over to play Arkham. And so Brody came over to play Arkham, and we played the nightmare that is the Forgotten Age campaign.
Oh boy.
If you're unfamiliar with Arkham, it is the most brutal campaign. It is very hard to get through and very punishing. It's a ton of fun, but it is by far the most difficult. But that night, I think Brody's wife, or maybe Brody, maybe it was a team effort, probably a team effort, had cooked baked some cookies, and they brought over a plate of cookies with a little candle in it, and we lit it, and I blew it out for my birthday. And like, honestly, looking back, it is like definitely pretty sad, but like, I went to play a game with a friend, and like, for this particularly difficult year in my life, like that was the only celebration I was going to get for my birthday. But like, somebody was there to celebrate my birthday with me, and it was over Arkham, and it was super special to me.
It could have been over Candyland. The fact that you have like friends that like care about you, even just doing the simplest thing. The simplest thing is bringing over some cookies and a candle, right? To play a game that you guys love to play together. I mean, that's the amazing thing, right? And the touching thing, and it's great. that may sound really like, oh, it sounds really bad and bummer. No, man, that's awesome because you have friends that care about you that much. They knew you were hurting. I would be shocked if they didn't know you were hurting. You know what I mean? And to do something like that for you, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I truly think that like for a lot of people, like gaming is there at a low point in their life. And like, it's definitely been for me. Right. And more importantly, the friends I've made through gaming, right. Not to like shortchange Brody. Brody's an amazing friend. Right. It just so happened that I have this amazing friend because we both liked Arkham, right? And more importantly, to circle back to your Star Wars nerddom, we had met originally through Star Wars Destiny, right in the office,
Right on.
So yeah,
right on.
I have made friends through gaming that have been there for me at like some of the darkest moments of my life,
Yes.
and put a candle into a plate of cookies when no one else was around to celebrate my birthday, and
Man.
I want that for other people, right? That's why I work so hard to like make gaming as good as it can be, right? Is everyone needs that moment.
Well, that's being a champion, right? That's being a
100%.
that is what that is. And I mean, while we're just going to talk about bummer stuff, like in the past like 4 years, right? I had a grandparent that I was very close with. My grandmother passed away, and one of the first people to reach out to me was a friend that at the time I only knew him because he did a podcast, and I messaged him like I was sort of like in their chat group because we talked about board games and stuff. And that was Jason, from the Board Game Mechanics, like just reached out to me and goes, "Hey man, I'm really sorry. My wife and I are praying for you. If you need anything, just reach out." I've never met him in real life at the time. Now we're like, we've gamed together several times. I love hanging out with him, but he was one of the first people, and I only knew him through board games, and our love of board games. Right. And then when my mom died last year, after like a long illness, it was a whole thing. But, some of the, other than my immediate family, like my board game friends, just were there for me, in a way that, like, let's just play some games, I don't need to go through everything. Like, let's just play some games. Let's just have a good time, and like you, I also have a previous marriage, and there were some dark times, and Bob was one of those guys that helped get me through it. And, just by being a friend and being there for me. And it's like you, right? I have always just then decided, since, going through rough times, it's like, I've got to be that person for my friends, I've got to do it, and I want to do it. Like, it's not just like this obligation. It's, it is like, no, it's fundamentally into my core. Like, no, man, if you need something, I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to come and help you, and like, what are we going to do? What do you want to do? Is it cookies? Let's do cookies. I love cookies. Let's go. So no, that's a great story. That's a great story. I love it. I love it. And I don't like, that's perfect because that is exactly what this list is about and why board games are so important,
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank
you. And before we get into Mike's, just to sort of break the tension a little bit. So Board and Box is new to watching tonight. So Board and Box, how do we know each other? Well, Mike and I, we are on the rundown together. How we know each other might come up later. If it doesn't, it'll come up in an honorable mention for sure.
It will.
But Mike and I are local-ish to each other and are friends from not just board game groups, but have grown in friendship through board games. Like, I only know Mike through board games. And then Dennis and I, we talked about it early on at the top of the show. We met at Gen Con at a mixer. Kim Breeze introduced us.
Oh yeah, 100%. Shout out to Kim.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's like amazing.
If there is anybody,
champion in the community.
If there is anybody that's a champion, Kim and her husband are freaking champions. They are. When you walk away after meeting Kim, you're like, really? Can anybody be that nice? You know what I mean? Like, and 100%. Yes, she is legitimately that nice. And I wish I was half as nice as Kim was. I'd be 1,000 times a better person. She's super cool. But so Board and Box, that's totally where we're at. And see, Bobby's got my back. Bob and I have been through a lot together, and that's what friends do, man. That's what
Yeah.
friends do. So, all right, Mike, bring us back up or tell us another sad story. Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
It's
Well, this is a story that does include you, because last year I got to meet for the first time Patrick and Julia, which is Tim's sister and brother-in-law.
that is a formative experience, whether you want it to be or not.
First time I met them, and I was told about this thing called JuliaCon. And I don't know if you recognize this, but this was almost exactly 1 year ago, because I was looking at my plays, and they were from 218, 219, and 220. So we're almost exactly a year removed from this event. And so his brother-in-law and sister organized this whole weekend of games. And how long have they been doing this, Tim?
Oh, ages. Yeah.
Okay.
They've been in the hospital
so-
for like 15 years, easy. Probably.
And so I was told about
I don't
this,
know how
about
long
this
they've been doing those
opportunity to
organizing.
do this. And at the time I was living with my girlfriend. I wasn't sure if she was going to let me like go away for a whole weekend just to play board games and indie, but I kind of didn't give her a choice. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And the fact that Tim invited me, because I had only been gaming with them, and we'll talk more about this later. At this time, I had only been gaming with them for like 4 or 5 months. So I like I didn't know what to expect. And we show up and there's food for the Friday evening. We show up and then we play board games at night. And then Saturday we show up and there's food and then we play board games all Saturday. And then we get there Sunday and there's food and we play board games for most of Sunday. And then we came back and I shot my first video with Board Game Rundown. So like that whole weekend was like, okay, wow, this is happening. Like, but they were just like, they showed me, if you're going to host like an all day event, this is how you do it. Like all the food, all the drinks, all the tables, all the space, all the games. They're like, they did it how you want one of those things to go. And they're exceptional hosts, exceptional people. And so, there's a few other stories that kind of come out of this event. Okay. Mm-hmm. So one, just all the games I played, just real fast. I wrote some plays down. I played Genotype, Blank Slate, Lords of Vegas twice, 10, Sushi Go, Into the Echo Side, Tyrants of the Underdark, Shipwreck Arcana, Sports Dice Football, Dwellings of Eldervale, Mob Big Apple, Dice Miner, Lords of Vegas twice, and an epic game of Ankh, Gods of Egypt, all in one weekend. It was so epic, just constant board gaming and eating great.
That's a really impressive list for a weekend.
All from Friday night to Sunday afternoon. Yeah. And now this game of Ankh. So Saturday night, Tim and I were like, dude, we need to play Ankh. We are unabashed fans. He and I will both tell you it's our favorite of Eric Lang's trilogy. And so this game is one of the reasons why. We decided Saturday night we were going to play a game of Ankh. And like, okay, let's just make this real easy. Let's just set it up Saturday night. And then like Sunday, we'll just find 2 people. We'll just set up 4 characters, go recruit some people. And sure enough, we did. And then we proceeded to play the most epic game of Ankh ever. The controversial merge mechanic, which makes people either love the game or hate the game. Tim and I were teaching the 2 new players, and somehow I'm in last. I'm trying a god I've never used before, so I'm kind of experimenting with strategies. I'm like, oh, I'm losing. Yeah, I'm merging with whoever. Tim was somewhere towards the front, but really struggled in that last conflict phase. And so the fact that I could see the merge coming and I had boatloads of followers, like 15, 16 followers. I'm like, okay, I'm merging. I'm not spending these. I'm going to save them, and it's going to be part of my merge strategy. I'm going to use them with whoever I merge with. Then I merged with Tim, and it was like Transformers molding together. We were like Optimus Prime. It's like we just synced up at like the exact same time. Tim, we're gonna play this card, and then we're gonna play that card, and then we're gonna play this card, and then if we get to play this card on this conflict, we will have won the game, and we did. And it was just so. It was one of the most epic, specific gaming experience I've ever had, and just the fact that it was like the cap to an incredible weekend. And my first time meeting them and doing this all weekend type of gaming thing, like this had to be on my list. It had to be on my list.
Yeah.
So Mike, I got it. Well, everything you said about Julia Khan is true, but the other thing that I have to point out is that the people that they invite and the people that show up are always awesome. Like all of the gamers, because like, oh no, I'm
Oh, now he's buffering. Right during the part where he wants to plug a bunch of the people that show up. Yep, he definitely did. He foresaw his shortcoming.
Mike, we'll have to get a game of Ankh in while I'm visiting. Later.
Oh my gosh,
I love Ankh so much.
It's both of us.
So
top
Rising Sun
five.
is my all-time favorite board game, and I backed Ankh at like the highest level. But it's in my pile of shame, right? It's on my shelf. It's not one I've managed to crack out with people. But yeah, like we should get a game in 100%.
See, I want to like Rising Sun more than I do. I like it. I thought I would like it a lot more.
Okay.
But to me, so far, Ankh is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm very excited to hear that. I've heard a lot of good things about it. It's just like I haven't. It just hasn't hit the table, right? It's always a competition, and I know. Like, just like the trilogy, right? Like Blood Rage,
right,
and Rising Sun, like are just so perfect,
exactly,
right? So well designed. That I'm dying to play Ankh, and it just it's
Tim
top
and
of
I
the list of to dos.
We this channel, we've got multiples of us that have been banging that Ankh drum since that game came out, man. It is just a fantastic, well-designed game. I feel like it's more elegant than the other games. I think it might even be easier to learn than the others.
Fair.
It's definitely easier to learn than Rising Sun. But that merge mechanic, it makes me go through a decision matrix that I've never made in any other game, transitioning from I'm trying to win to I think I'm about to lose, and it may be better to save this stuff to use it with my future partner. Just fantastic. Just oh my god.
It's super, super unique as far as like catch-up mechanics go, right? There's no other game that holds a candle.
You either love that or hate it, and we we love it. And that game is one of the reasons why.
Yeah, I 100% understand, right? Like to take the spiritual concept, right, of like Amun Ra and be like, how do I incorporate this into a board game? Like speaks to me, man, right? Like when we design from the ground up, right? Like we take the concept and we try it and like filter it through that understanding, right? And like as a game designer, like that sort of game design, that sort of thinking is like, what gets me like excited about the game, right? Of like, how do I incorporate that very unique concept into a board game? That's artistry, 100%, right? I think that's what makes the hobby beautiful and interesting. So I'm super into it.
Yeah. So I love this comment from Jason, which is absolutely hilarious. But
Jason always just comes up with the most brilliant comments sometimes. I love it.
Yeah, we got some firecrackers here. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But no, what I was saying before I went into my epic buffer where I'm like posed like I'm gonna read Shakespeare. No, Pat and Julia always have like the best people at their house, like the nicest people for those game weekends. And Mike, you can now count yourself amongst them. I'm just gonna say my wife doesn't believe me. But like I meet people, I get a good feeling about people, and I want to like hang out with them. I want to spend time with them. And then I met Mike. I'm not
about a year and a half ago.
No, I was just a bad joke.
Oh,
I meet people that I like and I want to spend time with, and then I met you. No, you meet people and it's, I feel like I get a halfway decent read on people. And so I didn't know Mike super well, but I did invite him to the game weekend, and it was obviously a home run. Like it worked out perfectly. So
very cool.
Okay,
Mike,
it
good
did.
one.
Yeah, number 2.
So my number 1 and 2 are linked, but my 2 is going to lay the foundation for my number 1. So 2014, 2015. Oh snap! Jason got it. He gets me. I don't know. 2014, 2015. I just got my Cthulhu Wars All In Kickstarter. I was going to some conventions. I was getting used to like confident in myself in the game hobby. Been in the hobby for a couple of years at that point, and was like teaching games and, getting used to that. And, local game store, Fantasy. Are you peeing over there, Mike?
I was. Dang it! I should have muted it before I did that. That's why I keep my bedpan right next to the tripod.
I'm going to call you out. I'm going to call. At least it wasn't like clunk. Anyways, local game store. Local game store was having open board game night, and they were putting it on Facebook. Hey, we're having open board game night. People come out. So I'm like, well, yeah, I'm going to go out and check that out. I'm familiar with that game store. I went there all the time to play Warhammer and Magic. I still would go in there every once in a while, buy some Magic cards, but like hadn't like hung out in there in ages. And so I go into this open board game night, and Mike, it's in the room that we film now. That whole room just used to be tables for gamers, and like a couple of tables would be taken up by like a D&D or a Pathfinder group. And then I just started meeting people that I never met before, playing these games.
I don't know this story, so I can't fill for him.
When the frame freezes, you're like, ooh, is he going to catch up? And like, we'll get the video with the audio, right? Or cut out. It's always, it's up in the air.
It's so weird. It's so weird because my audio will go for like 10 more seconds and then I freeze. So anyways, start going to this game night on the regular. It was like on a Thursday or something, and started going to this game night on the regular, started making like a ton of friends. And the owner of the store used to run it. Like he would be in there and he'd be like, and he knew me from back in the day when I was coming in playing Warhammer and stuff. So, I'd walk in and he'd be like, hey, Tim, how's it going? And then I'd come in with whatever new Kickstarter I had, right? And I'm roping people in, like, let's play Anachrony. I just got Anachrony. Let's play Cthulhu Wars. I just got Cthulhu Wars. Let's play Blood Rage. I got Blood Rage, right? Whatever new game I'm rolling in there with.
You're championing a board game, right?
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. Well, after a little while, Mark starts, coming to me and he goes, hey, man, I might get out of here a little early tonight. But can you just make sure everybody's playing a game? Like nobody's left out. Anybody shows up, they can play a game. I'm like, you got it, man. So I started like teaching games, and then, but then I would kind of not play so that if people rolled in a little bit later, because it would start at like 7 and go to like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And so I would teach games, and then around 7:30, 7:45, usually somebody kind of wanders in, and it's usually a newer person, right? And I'd be like, hey, what do you want to play? I just find them and be like, I can teach these games. You got a game you want to play? Like, let's play it. Like, what plays? And after a while, like I would walk in and Mark would be like, he's the owner of the store. He would be like, oh, would you mind like just taking care of things? I'm going to go. I got some stuff to do. And so like, if I was there, he kind of just left it to me to run his open game nights. Which was super flattering, now that I look back on it. I didn't think anything of it at the time because I'm just there excited to play board games. Like, let's go. I'm going to play some games tonight. And, but I made a ton of really good friends running those game nights and just meeting all kinds of people. I still run into some of them. Some people, the game night we had in 2016, I had my son. Well, I didn't have, my wife did, but I was there and I helped a little. And, but anyways, we had my son. And so like, I was bringing him there in like a carrier. And then, as he got older and it was like harder to, kind of keep track of him, as we're trying to play games, I kind of fell off of going to the game night. And then the game night kind of, after a little while, sort of dissolved and they stopped doing it. And then he started using the room to do other things. But man, those couple of years, those 2 or 3 years where I was like helping do that game night and running that game night, I learned so much about teaching games and about just ambassadorship, right? Like, like I didn't even realize how much I enjoyed just like introducing people into the hobby, and bringing, like somebody poked their head in that room and I'm like, hey, you want to teach something? I got I got stupid fun. I got regular fun. If you want to think we can sit over here, we could play euchre if you want. I don't care. Like, just hang out. You just want to be out of your house tonight. Let's do something. I don't care. And I just learned very, over that time, learned and honed how to just, hang out, play games, bring those people in, try to make people feel comfortable, and spend their time there. And it wasn't about like, oh, I've got a shill for the store or anything like that. I didn't work there. I just going in there, was excited to play games and meet new people. So that is my number 2 experience.
Yeah, that's the highest level of championship right there, right? Is
right,
like champion to the point where the store owner is like, here are the keys, lock up when you're done, right? And leaves. I like, honestly, man, I like, not to mince words, like I think that's beautiful, right? To get
I'm
the
very
hobby
proud of it.
to the point where like you literally like it like comes from within, right? It flows that like, I love gaming. I want to get people into it, right? I'm just here to teach games, right? I'm serving this community, not as like an act of sacrifice, but an act of joy, right? Like I am fueled by this, right? And like, I don't know, man. I love it, right? Like I said, this whole episode I think is about us having our lives changed and like reshaped by people doing that, right? And like, how beautiful is it that you have become that thing, right? Like your life wouldn't have gotten to this point without somebody putting you on this path. And now you are that person for other people.
Right.
Right. It's like a parenthood in a way, right?
Yeah.
There will be future generations of gamers and other people telling this same story, right? About how like Tim invited them to a game night. Tim was welcoming, right? And Tim set them on this path. And now they're running events for other people, right? Making them feel welcome, making them feel, like this hobby accepts them. It is just, yeah, I don't know, man. I think it is our board gaming hobby at its purest level.
And that's, like, I just hope that 5 people through all those years had a good time. You know what I mean? It's like, even if just one person comes away with a good story about it, I did my job. But yeah, no, and it's, and I just did it because I love it. There's no other reward for it,
100%. Right. But like, that's, and that was one of the things, right? When like Brody and I were really wrestling with like, what is Claromancy about? That was one of the things that I like brought to the table is like, these people deserve the world, right? Like they're very special people, not just to the board gaming community, but like to the world at large, right? Like they are making a positive impact on people, right? Like, let's say, forget 5, right? Forget 5 people who had a good time. Let's say 2, right? 2 people had a good time. If those people had enough of a good time down the line to put the effort in to run a similar event, right? Then they affect 4 people, right? And those 4 people affect 16, right?
Right.
Or 8 and then 16, right? On and on until like you functionally, Tim, have changed the world by like making 2 people's night, right? And it's just like this weird, like we have this ability to affect the world in a way that I think lots of people underestimate. And I see it come to the forefront in gaming all the time. So like I'm stoked, man. I think that's amazing. Like I am 100% unsurprised to find out that you are right the definition of the champion that we kind of like conjured in our heads when we were thinking about Claromancy, right? And like, how do we reward champions in our community, right? Because like gaming doesn't exist without those people.
Well,
right? Like,
and that's the great thing though is there's people like us everywhere. You know what I mean? There's people that are passionate about it, everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, Mike,
Right.
you know, Mike has an awesome game space, right? And he never hesitates to welcome new people into that space, you know what I mean, through in the game group. And that is another, you know, it's just another form of that, right? You know, it may not be the public space of the game store, but it's, you know, it's his home. It's even worse.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's an undetected serial killer rolling through his house.
Surprised you haven't even noticed that smell from my basement yet.
Oh, you are the undetected serial killer.
Oh, I'm the undetected smell.
Yeah.
So, in what may be the most smooth segue of all time, speaking of influential mics, my next story, my number 2, is thanks to a dude, Mike Brinker. Can I get a boiler up real quick?
Oh, boiler up. Are you serious? Yes, sir.
I got a boiler up for my wife, so you know, boiler up, Kelly. You got it.
Love that, right? Even though you got the Notre Dame cap on, you're still repping the Boilermakers.
Loyal to my wife.
His wife forces him.
Loyal to my wife.
So Purdue
She only
shout out
tunes
for anybody
in.
who doesn't know, right? I'm a Purdue grad.
Awesome. Same. Awesome.
I really? I wasn't
Yes.
expecting that.
Yes.
Based on, you know, what I'm seeing on Instagram. I definitely thought you were a
Right?
Purdue grad.
I rep. That's for sure.
So yeah,
I like this guy, Tim. I like this guy.
Moved to Southern Indiana, going into high school, right? So it was time to shop for schools. I was looking for a weird combination of computer graphics technology and engineering, and of the 2 schools in the nation, three schools in the nation that could provide that. My options were Rochester Institute of Technology, Brigham Young University, and Purdue University. Had engineering and also computer animation. And I was looking to double major in those. Right, Brigham Young was a little too Mormon and very far away from home. Right, that wasn't. I was
very Mormon.
So I was like, I don't know that I want to get into that. But then Rochester was like, you know, $20,000 more per semester than Purdue. So right, I was in state tuition. Purdue it was.
Yeah, there you go.
So I went to Purdue through a long, I ended up working at the computer labs, which is a very common college job, right? But like Mike will recognize that as ITAP, Information Technology at Purdue.
Right.
And they have a very specific shift that is you work at the Hicks undergraduate library during finals week. They have 24-hour staffing. And that is, if you don't have finals the next day, you get to work from like the hours of like 10 p.m. to you know, whatever, like 8 a.m. They have that desk staffed in case you're a student who like deleted their term paper on their laptop, right? And you're having a conniption, right? Somebody's there to help you recover it. But that never happens. It never happens. No. It is the dream shift at ITAP because like you get to stay up all night, you get paid, and you don't have to do anything, right? It is easy street. So anyways, I'm working this shift with a guy, Mike, not this Mike Brinker, who like we've gotten along all semester, and he's like, we're working an overnight shift. I'm bringing a case of board games, and literally brings a like wheeling suitcase of board games to play all night.
Yeah,
because no one's gonna bother us, right? The library is virtually empty. And like in particular, the memory that sticks out to me is Quarto. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Quarto. It is a brilliant abstract game, which is funny because I'm not into abstract games. But this is like Connect 4 on steroids. It's a 4x4 grid. You have a piece, and that piece has 4 attributes: height, color, whether it's square or round, so the shape, and whether it has a divot in the top or not. And you just put it somewhere on the 4x4 board, and the first person to connect 4 of any attribute wins, right? There's also a twist of you give your opponent the piece that they play on their turn. So like you could give them a tall piece, and they'll be like, oh, if I put this here, that's 4 tall pieces in a row. right? Or a square piece or a white piece instead of a black piece, right? But like, if you're very strategic about it, it is a mind-bending game. I've literally I've been beaten by 6-year-olds because they just like saw something I did not see. It is, yes, thank you, Jason. Quarto is amazing. I hate abstract games. I love Quarto. Mike and I are playing Quarto at 4 a.m. in a deserted computer lab / library. And it just kind of comes out that like, hey man, I work for Cryptozoic Entertainment at Gen Con. And like they have some openings for this coming Gen Con. They need volunteers to teach convention goers their game. You like games? You seem like you're decent at this. Why don't you apply? I was like, okay. Go on the website and there's some information to fill out, put my application in. And lo and behold, when it comes time to select volunteers for Gen Con, Dennis Perlstein's name is on the list. And so I end up getting my badge paid for Gen Con. If I had to guess, this is probably like 2013 or 2014. It was a while ago now. But yeah, I ended up showing up to work the crypto booth as a volunteer. You work the whole convention, in shifts to teach people their board games, right? They'll come up to the booth and be like, this game looks interesting. Tell
me what Cryptozoic game did you teach?
Well, so to some degree, right, you like rotate around. And like when they told me I was selected, I went and kind of familiarized myself with their catalog. I specifically went out of my way to prepare props, but like, Tim, do you recognize these at all?
I'm so excited. This is what I was asking for. This is specifically what I was asking for.
DC deck builder, right?
Hi, Mike. Welcome to the show. Dennis
Tim
is my new best friend.
Loves DC deck builder.
Yeah, which since then, right, has been
he had me at Cryptozoic. Just gonna say, please continue, Dennis.
Okay, 100%, right? So we've not just spun off into DC deck builder, but like we did NHL deck builder.
Got it. Power play over there.
Street Fighter deck builder. So like Tim, next Gen Con, like when you run into me, remind me to like send you over in Mike's direction, because like this guy Mike Brinker, right, who got me into Cryptozoic through iTap, right, of all places. Likes to run games where he just takes all of the Cerberus deck builders and shuffles them together, and you can be like, Naruto Lee Chen using like your, like slap shot, kick to defeat like the Joker, right? Just insane.
Right.
Like, all of the DC deck builders combined into like straight insanity.
Man after my own heart.
Right, like,
Harley Quinn with the one-timer.
100%, all of it, right?
Nice.
And it's just weird because I worked this job.
He's getting DC deck builder stuff apparently.
Yeah, I happened to work this one random job with iTap with this guy Mike, who's like, "Hey, you should apply to work for Cryptozoic," and that has defined my life largely, right? From that one moment of like Mike inviting me to apply to crypto, to a point where like, we got the memorabilia. Wait, Tim, you should go grab GKR while you're at it, because I know we talked about this 2 weeks ago, right? I gotta segue into this too, right? Because like Cryptozoic partnered with Weta on this, right? So I think the second year I worked with Cryptozoic, I spent half my time at the Weta booth demoing.
I got all the GKR stuff too. I love it.
And then the year after that, GKR actually hired me away from Cryptozoic to work their booth exclusively, right? Which is like how I got information into like, the inside of Weta Game Lab. All of these connections that I have spawned from this like one moment of Mike inviting me to Gen Con, right? And like I said, just largely
spider webs
in the last 10 years.
Spider webs into everything else, right? It's amazing.
And like you, Tim, my number one story really ties into this number two moment. And I don't want to spoil it. We'll get back to it, right? But like, he invited me to work Gen Con. I volunteered for Gen Con, and then like my entire life in the last 12 years has been radically changed by like that one invitation from a dude that I was just playing Quarto with.
Now, am I going to buffer again? Oh, I'm not buffering. Am I
buffering?
No.
Did you get that?
No. No. Yeah, I did. So I got a question. There's no wrong answer. Do you like DC Deck Builder?
I really like
that
it.
Means no.
No.
Go,
I mean, like there's some game design flaws, right? Like it definitely
sure.
snowballs. There's no great catch-up mechanic in DC Deck Builder.
Nope. You're correct.
I think that's really my only qualm with it. I actually, fun fact, for a gift for my ex who really liked Harry Potter, I designed a full Harry Potter DC Deck Builder core set and had it.
Sure.
So
nice.
We have that kicking around. But like, it's a great engine. Like it's not perfect by any means. But I think it's great in its flexibility and it's really fun to play.
It is a game very early on when I was getting into the hobby and I was transitioning out of playing Magic and I started playing DC Deck Builder and I was like, I'm here for it. And I fully admit it is a flawed game, and deck building games have been improved since then, but it will always, it's like Lords of Waterdeep, a game I also love. It will just always hold a place in my heart, and I just freaking love it. So
so like to that degree, like I didn't just bring the cards to show off the backs, right? Like when I worked for Cryptozoic, we got these.
Yeah, you got some of the promos I don't have, like the Gen Con worker promos.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
In particular, this one holds a place in my heart, right? Because we got handed these promos. I don't know if you can see that. The camera's not focusing real well, right? But like the year their volunteer organizer, shout out Javier, coolest dude in the world. Javier hands these out to the team and everyone's like, oh, Dennis, this one kind of looks like you, right? So I've always kind of thought like, oh, this is me in my crypto shirt, right? Especially because it's extraordinary stamina, right? And we've talked about like, being at these shows and like kind of, having that energy like fueled by the people, right? Like this is me 100%. This is, they didn't mean for it, but like this is me on a printed card. And like, this is probably one of the coolest trading cards. I mean, it's not even a trading card. It's just a promo, right? This is one of the coolest promos I own, right? Is everyone at the show being like, that's you, Dennis, and being like, it does fit. So yeah.
Fantastic story. I love it. Nice. I love it. And Mike, no, I did not plan to have somebody that actually worked for Cryptozoic at one point in time on the show to help validate my love of DC Deck Builder. So you can go kick rocks. That was an accident.
You go ahead. You had me with the pun, Jason. You'll get me with a pun every time.
DC Deck. Washington, DC Deck. The Jefferson Memorial. I would have assumed the Lincoln Memorial would have been OP. It's the most popular one.
It is. Oh, wow. Amazing.
Jason's here
double
for
tap again. Okay. All right. So my number 2 is very, very recent. Less than 2 weeks ago, Tim found out that a friend of his, Sam Stockton, was coming into town. He is the designer of Cult of the Deep and Forges of Ravenshire from BA Games. And we found out he was going to be in town. That same weekend, I was kind of thinking about doing like an all-day like gaming thing at my house. And then we found out Sam wanted to come in town. And then next thing you know, Tim's like, okay, I'll invite half my family over.
Listen, hold on.
And I'll fill your board game party.
Because you're skipping a part where it's like, man, I'm worried. It's just like me, you, and Bob that are going to be here. And I'm like, do you need people? Do you need people to show up? Mike, I got you.
If you haven't already learned from at least 2 of these stories, my closest friends are not as big of board gamers as I am. It just, I've got my board gaming friends, and then so the reason this was like one of my favorite experiences is because we ended up with 16 people over here last weekend. We had 4 tables going in my basement that I'm sitting in right now. Okay. And when I was at JuliaCon, I was like, this is the way to do it. Like, this is how I would want to do it. And when I bought this table, I had a friend custom make a board game table for me like 6 years ago. That was the kind of thing I thought about doing when I had that game table built. I bought this house 2 years ago. I paid for someone to finish the basement. It was not already done because I thought about doing that type of thing in this basement when I bought this house. And so to see like all of that finally for me as a homeowner that's been thinking about this and building up to this and like for years, to see all these people come over to my house to be able to eat all the food I cooked. Like, I had a huge taco bar that went over very well. We had multiple kinds of meat. We had queso, green onion, white onion, all the taco seasoning. If you needed something for a taco, I had it here. Okay. But it just, all the people that came over that had a blast, all the games that got played, just Sam over here teaching us his own game. He stopped by my house 3 days before he went over to Quackalope's house with Forges of Ravenshire. That's freaking cool, man. Like, and then we ended the night with a huge 8-player rowdy game of Ready, Set, Bet, which is just one of my favorite games. Everything about that day was just like so fun and very fulfilling to me. Like, it was a day that I've been seeing in my head for years.
Yeah.
And to finally be able to do it just felt really good. And I just hope that like it was as good of an experience for everybody that was here, which it seemed to be, as it was for me just being able to do it, you know?
Right.
So
yeah. And again, right, to circle back to that championship thing, right? Like 3 or 4 years down the line, you're going to have somebody talking about, right, like Mike Con, right, in Mike's basement. He got this game and it was super cool. And, you know, now I love board gaming and I welcome people into the hobby because it's my, you know, sacred duty to carry on that torch.
That's it. That's it.
That is,
yeah,
that's
Mike,
awesome. Yeah, the
Mike was
realization of that
worried.
dream.
Mike was worried. I threw up the bat signal. People came out, you know, and Mike was ready for it. He was ready for the challenge. We packed his house and he was ready for it. He nailed it. And as far as I know, everybody had a good time. You know, nobody smelled the dead bodies in the basement. So that was cool. So, you know, it went over really well. No, Mike, you nailed it. You did a great job. You know, it's, you know, and it's also super generous of you to open up your house like that. You know, I mean, you have a great gaming space. Of course you want to share it, but you also, you know, it's a big deal having a bunch of people over to your house, you know, and people you don't necessarily even know that well all the time. So to do that, right, is incredibly generous. And, again, provide a ton of food for everybody. You know, it was a great experience. I had the best freaking day. And I only played like 3 games, but I spent so much time just talking shop with some other, you know, with like Patrick and Sam and picking their brains and just kind of learning. Cause I love industry talk. And so we were doing so much industry talk and things like that. And I just love it. And, almost as much as I love playing games, but yeah, man, I mean, it was great. You did an amazing job. Like, hats off to you. Like 100%. You nailed it. You had a big shot. You were called up to the big leagues for your cup of coffee. And what do you do at your first at bat? You hit a home run, man. I mean, it was a good time.
Queso and ground beef and pork.
We got affirmation hour going on. See, this is one of the things that I was looking forward to, right? Is I was like, should I give everybody's full name when we like tell these stories? And I was like, absolutely. Like, these people are heroes. They deserve it, right? And in this case, Mike, right? Like, Mike stepped up to the plate. Mike nailed it. Mike's a champion. Everybody, you know, like, deserves to have that moment, right, of being recognized and being thanked for doing the job.
And even Andrew Warner himself showed up late.
He did show up.
He did show up. and then I left. No, Andrew's an amazing dude too. Super good guy. But anyways, that's a good one.
Okay.
Mike. That's a good one.
We are Thank you. I'm glad it worked out. It was awesome. It really was. So our number one gaming experiences.
Okay, so my number one is probably not going to be a shock to those who know me. So this will be new to Dennis. So I open board game night at Fantasy Games here in South Bend kind of fell by the wayside. It wasn't even really a thing anymore. And one day I get a message from the store owner that says, "Hey Tim, I'm looking to start like a big project that involves board games and stuff. And I wonder if you would want to come into the store, spend a few minutes, talk to me about it." I'll never forget. It was Thanksgiving weekend of 2018. And I was like, okay, yeah, man, I got some time, and I picked it. I forget I don't remember if it was a Saturday or a Sunday, but I just said, "Hey, I'll be in. Does this time work?" We sit down in the side room where we used to run all those games. And he's like, "I want to start a board game channel. I want to start a YouTube network. I want to have a Magic the Gathering channel. I want to have a miniatures channel. And I'd like to have a board game channel. And, you used to be the alpha board gamer around here. You'd always come rolling in with your Kickstarters. You did a really good job of making sure, people were playing games." He's like, "I feel like you've probably got like a good personality and wouldn't be embarrassed to be on camera. Would you be interested in that?" And I'm like, 100% yes. What do we got to do? And, Mark's like, "It's up to you. What kind of show would you want to do?" So then I spent like basically the next 2 months coming up with a name, coming up with a format, coming up with what I want to do. Started to try to come up with people to even ask to try to do this show with me. And Mark from the game store is basically like, "Look, I will give you the cameras and a place to film. And if there's a game we've got in the store you want to talk about, let me know. We can figure it out." And I started off on, I'll never forget, because it was like Christmas break. Like I had a week of vacation around that time. I grabbed a couple people in and I scheduled I think we filmed like 10 videos first before we even went live. And so we went live in 2019 and, but we had a bunch of videos in the can already. And like Mark was doing the editing himself, and he will be the first one to admit it wasn't the best, but it was very bare bones, right? Like our lighting wasn't great. Our mics, we were still figuring everything out. We were still even a little stiff in the format and the presentation, but like we kept at it and we kept at it. And it's, and we stopped for a couple months during COVID when COVID first hit and everything shut down. And then, I told Mark, I said, "Let me know, if we open back up, like, let me know. I still want to do the show." And had I known now what I know then, or had I known then what I know now, like I would have just been doing this from my basement. Like we would have never even taken a break. But technology's also gotten better too, right? My phone's gotten better. My mic, I bought a mic. My mic's gotten better. But man, the show has grown and evolved. But through doing the show, whether it's an excuse to just reach out to and talk to people, but like Mike and I became friends before the show. Mike kind of knew who I was just because of like board game, like I was arranging, board game things and stuff. And so we kind of had talked about probably for like a couple of years about meeting up, but he lived in Elkhart. I lived in South Bend. And so it's like, oh, will these worlds ever collide, and then but I've met so many people and I've made so many friends, even just from doing the show and having the excuse of doing the show where I reach out to game designers. And I love talking to game designers before I had the show, but now it's like, I've got an excuse like, "Hey man, I can help you out. Like it's worth your time to talk to me, let's do something." And
turn it into a win-win.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, right. Every single person that I've ever talked to and wanted to have on the show, they would have talked to me anyways, just because a lot of these guys are these are their passion projects and they're happy to talk to anybody that wants to hear them give their pitch. But this show has legit like changed my life. Like it just, not that my life was terrible, but I mean, it's just even gotten so much better. It's so much richer, now. And I get to talk about my hobby, my favorite hobby, my passion, on a platform, and I get to share it with other people. And, and again, though, right, it's additional responsibility now. I was an ambassador before and I didn't really think about it too much, but now, like, I really got to up my game. Now I've really got to be an ambassador, and yeah, we'll joke around and we'll tease each other and we'll hate on games and we'll talk about games we love and all that good stuff. But I mean, you really have to be mindful, right? Like, let's just say, for example, and this is totally not fair because your game's not out, but let's just say Dennis Perlstein made a game and it's like, oh, that game sucks. We all hated it. But here's the amazing thing at the end of the day. That dude made a game. That dude put himself out there and he made a game. Now, spoiler alert, Worn Wanderers actually seems pretty cool. It does not suck. But that's the thing, right? It's like I get to meet all these people. I wouldn't have met you for that reason, but guess what? Now we're going to play Ankh sometime. I'm going to tell you, we're going to have a great freaking time when we do it. Win or lose. Mike and I have played a terrible game of Ankh. We had an awful time playing Ankh. But guess what? It made for a good story. We still love the damn game. And and these guys all in the comments, right? Like, there's a few people, like Bob's on the show. Bob knows, that doesn't lessen the value of his comments. But Andrew F., Jason Dunham, Nix, like a lot of these guys, we've never actually met. We know them because of the show. They hang out in our Discord. They talk to us on our live streams. And I can be having the worst day at work. I will text Mike. I will message Mike and be like, today has been such hot garbage. I can't wait for the show tonight. Like, I just can't wait. Cannot wait to get there and just hang out. Even if it's just me and Mike and we're hanging out with everybody that's commenting, it is a beacon of light, whether it's the day we get together to film or it's our live streams, it is just always a wonderful experience. And I'm just so grateful and lucky to have it. But, and again, this is one of those things that, like, is, we're talking about game experiences in the past that have affected us and brought us to where we are now. And this is one that is like perpetual, and that day that I was asked by somebody thought highly enough of me to think that we could do a show and do a good job at it and do it on their dime, like, freaking amazing. Like, just what dumb luck, and how do you not absolutely make the most of that opportunity?
But like, time out though. It's not dumb luck, right? Like, you have to like appreciate that. Like, yeah, it's good and it happened to you, right? But like, you manifested this experience by being that champion, right? We talked about, okay, Tim's the one running board game night and welcoming people in and doing the teach and sitting out of the games, right, in an act of self-sacrifice so that if somebody walks in later, right. Just not feeling bad, not saying like, oh, I put myself upon the altar, right? Like, oh, I'm so
right.
Yeah. For not playing in the game, right? Because of this genuine desire to like welcome people into the hobby, right? And karmically, right? I believe that pays off, right? Like that goodwill that you deserve for being that person, for being the champion, comes back to you in Board Game Rundown, right? And gives you the opportunity to have a platform and reach out to people. And yes, this is amazing, right? It's wonderful, but it's just like, if we're being real, it's just what you karmically are owed, right? Like,
dude, you put good into the universe and it's going to come back to you. It may not come back to you tomorrow, but it's going to come back to you. And I'm 100%. I'm a firm believer in that, and even if our channel never grows beyond, what it is right now today, I don't care. I have a great time doing it and I love every minute of it. Obviously, we'd love to, keep going, keep growing and all that stuff. But no, man, I mean, I'm just so thankful, and the trick is you can have all these good things happen to you, but you can't take them for granted. You know what I mean? It could all end tomorrow, could all be done. So you got to just live in the moment and love that moment for it. And And so when I like, because here's the thing about you, Dennis, is you stuck out to me when I met you at Gen Con because you were so passionate, you were so high energy.
I didn't get to meet you at Gen Con, Dennis, so I don't get to fill. I don't have a lot of filler for his statement here. But Tim is very passionate about board games, so anybody that's high energy is going to vibe with Tim for sure.
I've never in my life been accused of being chill.
No, but the thing is I know I buffered like right at the perfect moment. But dude, like it was so much fun meeting you and like talking to you and just like how passionate and excited you were, not just about your own game, but just like being there, right? Being in the moment and like just carpe diem, and I just jive with people like that. I love it. And I like being around people like that because I feel like good energy breeds good energy, and you put yourself
100%.
You put yourself right, around, you surround yourself with good people and good energy, and you're going to get good energy, and even when things are crap, like that's all right. You're going to get through.
Yeah. Not to mention, like, to circle back, right? We've talked about that, right? When things are crap, if you have those good people that you've surrounded yourself with through the good times, right? They'll stick a birthday candle in the cookies and they'll light it and you'll get to celebrate with them, right? Like,
that's it.
Yeah, it's not always, life is not always great, right? I don't think anyone is going to tell you otherwise. Life is really hard sometimes, right? But like, if you meet those great people through things like board gaming in those good times, they will be there for you in those hard times, right?
That's it, man. So, to quote the Princess Bride, life is pain. Anybody who tells you otherwise is selling something. And I will pass the number one baton to Dennis now. So
okay. So to hit upon this guy, I mentioned Mike Brinker. Mike is just like a genuinely amazing human being. Right. You talk about like people who are putting good into the universe, right. And getting good back. I think Mike is definitely one of those people. But on top of inviting me to Cryptozoic, in the original, like Gen Con for me, right. Like technically the second time I ever went to Gen Con, first time I ever worked it, and spawned like a lot of what came after, working for Cryptozoic, working for GKR, right. We mentioned in the past that like I had moved to Boise, across country, and especially for like a relationship that down the line would be like very emotionally challenging for me. So I moved cross country, right? Again, I don't have any friends. And I actually moved right after graduation. So this was like June. I moved to Boise, right? Late June. And then July flies by, and early August, right? We are into Gen Con. And I have a standing engagement with GKR or Weta specifically.
Yeah.
At this point, and go to Gen Con to work. And because I've kind of like moved on from Cryptozoic at that point, but they launched me on this journey, right, through Mike's invitation. They're having like an open board game night. Like I just hear through Mike that like, oh, hey, the Cryptozoic crew is getting together to play board games tonight. And I think to myself, like, those are the people who started me on this journey, right? Like the fact that they invited me to Gen Con and helped me out and launched this, to like Javier thinking like, oh, he's a computer animator. He'll like to work with Weta, right? So like I worked with Weta. Just like Cryptozoic was a really awesome company. And so I go to pay my respects, say hello to old friends. And there's this guy who, when I was working for Cryptozoic at the shows, he was working for Cryptozoic in like, a much more official capacity, not as a volunteer. This guy Skinner comes by. He's since moved to another company as well, but he comes by to pay his respects to little old friends at the Cryptozoic event. And we've always been pretty cordial with each other, not like close by any means, but like we had known each other up to that point. And just, like he came by to pay his respects. We said hello. And then after that, he kind of wandered off. Turns out that he wandered off to go talk to Mike, the guy who had originally invited me to work for crypto. And mentions to Mike, he's like, oh man, I should go. I got to get up super early. I've got a flight in the morning. Mike asks him, oh, where are you flying to? And he goes, oh, I'm flying to Boise, Idaho.
Oh.
And Mike goes, really? That's crazy. Dennis just moved to Boise, Idaho. Right. And Skinner comes back out after talking to Mike and was like, you just moved to Boise? No one moves to Boise.
Exactly.
Right. It's a pretty small city. I was like, yeah, like a month ago. And he said, are you familiar at all with Star Wars Destiny? And I said, I've never played, but it's always like, I've always been interested. It's always been one of those games I've wanted to play. And he said, okay, well, you know, a crew plays Thursday night at Phoenix Fire Games. You should come out and play with us. Right. And this is 1 month into moving cross country.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to myself, like, okay, that sounds amazing. And they weren't meeting immediately that Thursday. But the next Thursday after, I showed up and I met. And lo and behold, like there was a crew there ready to play Destiny. And that is how I met so many people that have been influential in my life. Right? Like this guy, Nick Nelson, ends up becoming like de facto rules manager for Star Wars Destiny. If you ever played a Star Wars Destiny event, like there's a good chance he was your head judge because he just knew the rule set as well as or better than the guys who made the game. He ended up like seriously, the dude devours technical documents in a way that like I cannot comprehend.
Sure.
Like total machine, amazing dude. But he ends up becoming like an integral part of the playtesting team. He knows that I like game design, and invites me to join the playtesting team. And through that, like, you know, I have playtesting credits on Star Wars Destiny. I have playtesting credits on Star Wars Legion. Ended up going to Gen Con to work for Fantasy Flight, which, you know, like really buffered the resume. You know, so like all in all, just an amazing experience through this crazy chance encounter of Skinner saying to Mike, I'm going back to Boise in the morning. And Mike saying, Dennis just moved to Boise. Skinner invites me. Right. And now like Brody, I met Brody through Star Wars Destiny, Clarimancy Games, right? We would have never started if Mike hadn't said to Skinner, like, Dennis just moved to Boise, right? To find my life. One crazy moment of one dude saying to another guy, this dude just moved to Boise. That guy coming over and saying, come play Star Wars Destiny with us. Changed the course of my life in an incomprehensible way.
And that's the thing though, right? Is in this hobby and just in life in general, you put yourself out there, you open yourself up to these experiences, you know, you treat people well around you. Because believe me, if you were a jerk, you know, and nobody wanted to be around you, they wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I mean, Dennis moved to Boise, but you know, maybe don't say anything. You know, like, but that's not how it works when you are, you know, when you're a good human being and you're
when you're a good human being, good things happen. Hey, full circle. Oh, we got a longer Tim buffer session than normal. Timbot error.exe number 4.
Yeah, good job, Mike. Good job.
Got you.
No, Dennis. Yeah, I mean, you're there. You're working hard. You're making all these great connections, right? And then one thing all of a sudden leads to another. You know, again, if you were not a good person, a champion for the hobby, nobody be campaigning for you. Nobody be like, oh yeah, talk to this guy. You need to meet this guy. Nobody would. I mean, that's especially in our hobby, right? Word of mouth, because nobody's getting rich doing this unless you're Eric Lang. And I don't even know if he's rich, but nobody's really getting rich doing this. You know, and it's all word of mouth. You know, you've just got to be somebody that people want to be around and work with, you know, unless your game designs are that undeniable that they will put up with anything just to play your amazing game. But, and I don't know of that scenario. But yeah, I mean, that's it. It's a testament to your hard work and your effort and your energy that you pour into this. You know, I mean, like you just said, clarimancy, right? It would not be a thing if you weren't allowing yourself to be in these situations and being open to these things to happen to you. And then also having the the will and the personality to form these relationships with other people, you know? So
Yeah. See, I didn't intend for this to end up as the affirmation hour, right? But like, this is just us telling stories, right? You tell a story, Tim, about like this one dude out of the blue invited me to this thing, and I'm like, no, you deserved it. Don't you see, dude? You
right.
deserved it. You're great, right? And then
Right.
you're like, you're a great dude. That's why people wanted to be around you, right? So Mike, tell us how you deserve affirmation. Right.
Yeah, please. No pressure, Mike.
That ultimately was somebody changing your life. But really,
We are 1,000% going full circle with this, fellas, because
snap.
I am going to talk about the very first time I played a game with Tim, because it changed the trajectory of my life ever since. It did. It did. That's why it's my number one. So, as I've said, I'm way more of a board gamer than my friends that I've known since I was a kid. I accepted this, and that's why I started looking and branching out and trying to find people that could. I was already sucked in. I need people to pull me in even farther, and I knew it. And so I went online to find a group. And then I believe I started talking to Tim about 3 years ago because he made some comment in a Facebook group about a game. I responded. I think a short conversation happened, and I'm like, oh, where's this guy from? Oh, wait, he's local. Mm-hmm. Wait, he has a mutual friend that I've known since I was 7 years old.
Oh, and the guy that lives across the street from me?
Yes, I've known him since I was a kid. And so I just decided to message Tim out of the blue. Hey, looks like you like board games. You're local. You're that mutual friend of yours. Oh, he's your neighbor. I've known him since I was like 7 years old. And I was like, oh, a local guy that likes board games. And him and Bob also organize local meetups. And I didn't really for a while I was working weekends, so I couldn't coordinate with their weekend meetups. Then I finally did. I came to one of their public meetups. Unfortunately, it was in late February of 2020, and then like the whole world shut down. I finally make it to one of Tim's meetups, and the world shuts down. And so I'm like, dang it, I thought I found a group, and now I'm like back to square one again. Because I had the Warsaw group. I moved back up here. I was without a group again. I went without a group for like 2 years. And so a year and a half goes by. I'm still randomly chatting with Tim. Now I'm like, Tim, do you have a group? Are you holding out on me? It's killing me. Tim, I basically invite myself. I'm like, dude, if you have a group that meets up, I would be honored to join because I need more of this hobby and I'm not getting it. And it wasn't even Tim hosting. It was another guy in the group hosting. He gets me in their Discord and like I'm like, okay, I'll show up this week. And you just never know what you're gonna get. Like from messaging Tim, I felt like he was gonna be pretty cool. But I was meeting 8 brand new people. And
I get
like
a gut
Tim
feeling
wasn't
about
even there
people.
yet.
I get a gut feeling about people, and then I will vouch for them. And that's what I did. And Mike never made me regret it.
And so this evolves quite a bit. I know, as Bob said, you guys haven't been able to get rid of me since. But this was such a monumental thing for me. So I show up, everybody's friendly. I even talked Tim into playing Lords of Hellas, which I wanted to play for years.
You tried so hard to talk me into it. Like basically, hey, do you want to play Lords of Hellas? And we had it halfway set up.
Well, I was like the new guy. I'm like, how much pull am I going to have suggesting a game? But Lords of Ragnarok was live on Kickstarter at the time, and I had been wanting to play it for years. I'm like, this is too deep of a game for me to just buy and like try to teach my non-gaming friends. This is too much. They're medium at most. And so we played Lords of Hellas. And it was one of those just epic games that like will stick in my mind for a while. And like 3 different people could have finished the game within a round on like multiple different win conditions. And just then we played QE and had a blast playing QE. I actually brought that, so I was able to teach a game that I had brought. But that was like just a jumping off point. Because then I showed up every Friday. And then I got invited to that JuliaCon,
Mhm.
And then that same weekend, I'm on the board game rundown for the first time.
Mhm.
Like, I was just a dude that just enjoyed playing board games. And then next thing you know, I'm like talking about board games on YouTube. And like, it's changed this hobby so much for me. Like, obviously now I'm friends with you and Bob and Dan and Spencer and Andrew and Caleb and Jesse and Jonathan, all those guys that show up every Friday that are
Mhm.
good friends and are eager to play board games. And now I get to drive out to Fantasy every Sunday when, when I'm free and just talk about board games for several hours. And now it's evolved to where we do this for 2 hours every Wednesday night.
I know.
You want to talk about changing the trajectory of my life? Like, I went from like, when am I going to get to play the next heavy game with like someone that can teach me instead of me having to buy all the games and teach everyone else, to finally a group. Oh my God. And I get to talk about games on YouTube. Like, just a gigantic difference in what this hobby means to me now. I wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for that, Tim. So,
No,
like,
hey,
how can that not be my number one?
Thank you
Listen.
for putting that on screen briefly, because I was like 2 hours as we approach the 2.5 hour
have we
mark.
have eclipsed 2.5 hours? Yeah. No, but here's the thing, Mike, is my honestly, man, my whole top 5 could have just been about people I do the show with. Like how I met Dan. We were at a game store. Bob and I were getting ready to play Lords of Hellas, ironically the same game. And Dan's hanging out and going, "Oh, I was excited about this game." Years later now, we do the show together. Bob and I with the rando D&D, cyberpunk game encounter, and then Bob's been in both of my weddings as a groomsman. You know what I mean? Spencer and I met because at the same game store I met Dan at, there was a Ticket to Ride tournament that I just went to on a lark, and I beat Spencer, won the whole thing. But and then that got me invited to Spencer's game night, and it's like, it's just the whole thing is like, it's just serendipitous, like I could, my life is just better for all of these things and all of you guys, and it's, and Dennis, you're part of that mosaic now, whether you like it or not, and you're welcome to the,
Well, I like it.
welcome
I like
to
it
the
quite a bit.
Wednesday, welcome to the Wednesday affirmation,
Right? Yeah.
hour.
Yeah.
But like I've met some of my absolute most favorite people because of this hobby, and it's funny because, Mike's talking about this. I'm going to show this again though, real quick, is Mike and I met at Gen Con because they were demoing the mission control at the Third World Studios like area, and it wasn't like Mike's game, but the designers were there. And then we got out of the thing and I started talking to Mike and learning about Mike's story and learning about like their show, the Full 42. And then, like I just connected with Mike like really hard, like in a great way. And then we had Mike on the show. We went for like 4 hours, just talking about whatever. And it's like, I just have made so many amazing friends because of this. Like, and sort of like you, Dennis. All right, man. Like I moved a lot as a kid and I didn't have a lot of friends all the time, and there were some times where it's like, I mean, I could, probably like you could, right? I could tell the sad story about the nerd being bullied and not having a lot of friends. And so when you made friends, it meant so much to you and it was so important. And because, and I'm just going to guess, I'm going to project my own experiences onto you. So I apologize for that. But as somebody that had a hard time, as a kid, like when you have the opportunity to like make friends and welcome other people in, and now you could be the guy that you wish that you would have found, when you were 13 years old and being picked on.
Yeah.
And now you get to be that person to like, welcome other people. Well, hell yeah. Why wouldn't you do that? Right. I mean, that's what you do. And, this hobby, and whether I had the show or not, this hobby just opens up to that, right? I meet so many great people. Mike's amazing. Mike is freaking amazing. I love that Mike has come in, you know, and he talks about butting in, but like I tease Mike because it's like he was asking me about like the trade market value on Russian railroads and should he trade it? And I'm like, well, dude, it's getting a reprint. Get rid of it now. Get something good. It's getting a reprint.
Greatest trade ever.
See,
I traded in out-of-print Russian railroads for Dwellings of Eldervale Legendary Edition, and now it's like impossible to get that game. And Russian Railroads is back in print.
but it's just like goofy, stupid things like that, you know, and you get the opportunity to meet fun, you know, happy, you know, great to be around people. And it's like, you know, and you know, Dennis, if I didn't like you, I wouldn't want you on the show. You know, I wouldn't want to spend this much time with you.
Well,
you know, and
well, now that
go on, Mike.
Oh, now that Tim stole all my thunder for my number one. No, I mean it's funny because I don't remember who it was, but there was somebody that watched the show and assumed that we had been friends for like years. And really, we've only been gaming together since this experience a year and a half ago. We've just built this rapport over the last year and a half. I'm just a guy that loves, I'm not that geeky at all. I'm just not. I don't know a whole lot about movies or sci-fi. I'm just a guy that freaking loves board games. And like, I like to talk about them. And yeah, I did go to Purdue, not as an engineer, but as a telecom major. So when I met Tim, I'm like, you know, if this went well, I bet there's a lot I could suggest for the channel because I've done this kind of stuff. And so here we are. But also I've met some great friends. Like if I look at the plays I had from last year, I played more games with Bob Hooper last year than anybody. So like I've met some good friends along the way, and now we're doing Gen Tech Con together. And I mean, heck, just think about this. A year ago, we had 700 subs.
Yeah.
We're now 2,400 subs, which isn't a lot, but it's tripled in a year.
Yeah. No, but like you were talking about it earlier, right? Like how like that like pivotal moment a year and a half ago, right? But like we're sitting here now talking about experiences from 10 years ago, right? And like this crazy, like I can't imagine what my life would look like if it weren't for that experience. So fast forward 8.5 years, right? How many people know Mike and Tim from Board Game Rundown, right? How many board games have been like brought through this beautiful gauntlet, right? And you know, how many people have been brought into the hobby through people that you inspired to bring others into the hobby, right? And that's really why I wanted to talk about this, right? Like that's what drives me, right? Is just like 10 years from now, this is going to be a story that you tell about like 10 years ago, I would have never thought my life would have taken this trajectory based on this one gaming encounter, right? And now hundreds of thousands of gamers, right, like want to know what I have to say, not because like I'm power hungry, right, or like I'm out to make a buck, just because like I'm a good person. I want to help other people get into this thing that I love so much.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it, right?
That's
put that good energy out there.
That's the thing, man. I'm going to tell a funny story about Bob real quick. So Bob and I at conventions before the show, Bob and I were like the guys teaching games, right? We're the guys with the new games. We're always buying the new games, had the new Kickstarters. We're teaching people games, and we just love games, right? If you'll meet Bob at some point in time, Dennis. Bob's like one of the nicest dudes you'll ever meet in your life. Don't tell him I said that, but he's watching. I'm like, Bob is naturally one of the very first people I ask to do the show with me, because it's like, okay, who is passionate about board games and can like eloquently voice their thoughts, right? Because that's the other thing, is you can't just have anybody on a show. You know, you've got to have guys that can actually like articulate their points and have, also strong opinions about things. And so I'm like, Bob's gonna be perfect. I get Bob, we're starting to do the first thing, and he's real nervous and like apprehensive about it. And this isn't live, like we weren't doing anything live. And I'm like, Bob, like you are so natural, like at meetups and conventions, like, because Bob and I are like organizing at this point in time. Bob and I are organizing large events. We coordinated like a big proto spiel that was very successful, like in South Bend.
Nice.
And we've done like a lot of things, and Bob is not shy by any means. But I'm like, Bob, what's like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm just really nervous. I'm like, why? And he's like, well, when I was a kid, like they put me on camera. I forget if it was like for a spelling bee or something like that. He'll correct me, but they were going to put him on camera for something when he was in school. And I don't remember if he actually threw up or if he just felt like he was going to throw up. And it's like, dude, you'll be fine. Like, it's just you and me. We're having a conversation. Like, that's like, I want the show to be my friends and I like hanging out, and like, let's just talk about games. Let's just talk about board games. Oh, here it is. He had to memorize a poem, and he cried. And he was 32 when it happened. No,
I would probably cry as well.
He was a grade schooler. But
at 32,
yeah. All true.
On the draw, Mike.
All true. Good one there. But anyway, I was like, Bob, we're good, man. Like, come on. Like, you're just talking to me, and you wouldn't know it if you watch the show and you watch the way that Bob is on camera. He's gotten so much more comfortable and everything. But I mean, that's the thing is like, I'm just doing this thing with my friends and people I want to talk to, and it's amazing. And I'm so damn lucky to even have this opportunity, like Mike said, right? We've known each other tangentially, we've known each other for a couple of years, but really, Mike and I have only really been hanging out for like 2 years now?
About a year and a half.
A year and a half. And, I talk to Mike every day. Mike and I message every day.
Once he let me on the show once, I wouldn't shut up about show stuff. I'm like, let's try this. Have you considered that? And then there's this. And then, Tim and I are big sports fans. So
yeah, and we're sports fans. But Mike, don't ever shut up, dude. Like, and the thing is, and I try to be like really honest with all my friends. I try not to hold anything back. I just like everybody to know where I'm at, right? Like, let's all be on the same page. And Dennis, like, if we're not picking on you, we don't like you, so like, if we're being too nice to you,
that was a shared bonding moment for my girlfriend and I. It was like, oh, we care about each other because we make fun of each other. Like,
exactly. Exactly. So, like it, and that's the thing in my family. If you go to like one of my family gatherings and nobody's picking on you, you're in trouble. You're never getting invited back. If everybody's digging on you and giving you a hard time, you're good. You're locked in. You're forever. I mean, Mike knows. Mike's been to family events now, and
I've hosted one.
Yeah, now you have, because I set up the bat signal and all my family showed up. Mike, to my credit, I had family drive 3 hours to come to that game day.
Yeah, you did.
Wow.
Patrick and Julia came up from Indy for this. So but I even made sure that Patrick had gluten-free tortillas.
But that's the thing, Mike.
Yeah, okay. All right. JuliaCon taught you well. You sound like a consummate host.
Yeah. No, listen. They wouldn't have showed up if Mike wasn't an A+ guy.
A question: where are we having my live visit? Because I'm like, is Mike hosting that? Because I'm pretty psyched right now, if I'm being honest.
Well, we're gonna have you in the studio, right? So like, it won't. I don't know if Mike's gonna bring the taco bar there, but
oh wow.
I'm not gluten free. I'm much lower maintenance than that. I promise.
Right. So don't have to worry about corn tortillas then. That's great.
Right.
I'll bring my 3-way crock pot. Yeah.
Right.
No, wait, is Jason our friend that's down near the Ball State area?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
He's not too far from where my family's located.
Yeah, so we're just gonna have to beat Jason.
Mike, this was like 2 weekends ago. See, if you make a trip up to Northern Indiana, you're like, hey, board game rundown guys, I'm gonna be in town. Mike may offer to be your B&B and I may offer to make food so that people will hang out at my house all day and play games. So
yeah, because
I'm flying to Indiana. I mean, so my family's still out there, right? So I'll get to see my family, right? But it'll I'm in town, so
they're still are they still in Madison?
No. So they moved to Valpo since then, right?
Oh, that's even closer. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So when we do the live studio thing in wow, that's like a week out.
Week and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, the 24th, right? So yeah, that is 9 days away.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be in town from the 22nd on. So like if we're having oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
No, see, look, there's Bob already. Bob is also a champion. Bob's a champion, right?
Dude, listen.
You might have to clarify, Tim. I'm not sure if Tim started Bob on being a champion or if Bob started Tim on being a champion.
I think the thing is Bob was already a champion, and then two champions, cross paths.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Right? That's the thing is we're in this great community where everybody's putting each other on better paths. I don't know who said it.
I can take no credit for Bob. Bob was an amazing dude before I met him, and then we just met and made each other more amazing.
Somebody said good people attract good people, right?
Oh, that was Mike. That was Mike from the Full 42. That was Mike Giuliano.
Yes. Good job, Mike.
Right? Like Giuliano, excuse me.
Overwhelmingly good community. We're attracting more good people to it. It's self-powered. It's amazing.
And he is right. Good people do find good people. And I really believe that because I've met some people in the industry that I probably wouldn't ask to be on, and hang out with. But that's a very small percentage. There's so many people that I've met that I'm just like, dude. Well,
and like if I can too, like from the publishing side, we have been just so lucky, right? I mean, like you talk about, so like I got invited to Cryptozoic, right? And this guy, Javier, blew my mind, right? This is a dude who I spent 16 hours working for one weekend, and a year goes by, and he thinks we need a partnership with Weta Workshop. Dennis is an animation major at Purdue. He'll get a lot out of that. And he paired me up, and I found out he did that intentionally. And I was like, you are one of the best humans I have ever met. Like there's no other way to put that. Like the fact that you remember our very short interaction about my college major, and then a year later, here you are helping me pursue my professional goals and pairing me up with Weta is amazing, right? Like that in itself is one thing, right? Like that's an amazing person, right? And then it just like from there it goes crazy, right? We have so many good people in this industry paying really close attention to us as people, making sure that we're achieving the best that we can. Right. And like, I got to shout out, we've got an entire thing, and I haven't mentioned, I for shame, Barrel Aged Games is the name of this publisher that we met, Gen Con 2021.
Okay.
And Kalani and I, like when we were sort of fomenting, Claromancy Games and thinking like, okay, can we take this thing that like Brody and I have been doing and turn it into a formal company? Claromancy Games like pushed us along. They have mentored us through this process. And like through that, we've met so many cool publishers who just like without any hope of reward or any promise of recompense are just like, oh, you're a young publisher who needs help. Here's our advice to you, right? Like you're a cool company. You're a cool game. We want to help you succeed. That I don't know of another industry where that exists, but it exists in Force. It's an amazing industry to be working in. Like we are all on this shared team, and it's so cool. It's super cool.
Well, and it's kind of funny because even recently you've seen that sort of the bad guys are getting weeded out of this industry.
I don't know what you're talking about at all. That hasn't been top of the headlines.
Hey, Dennis, you don't have to say anything. I'll say it because I don't have any ties or anything. I don't have any contractual obligations to anybody. but there's so many amazing people like running companies and that are involved in companies and tied into companies that just want to see people succeed, right? Like, let's just say, and I'm gonna put Mike on the carpet here, and let's just say Third World Studios saw your game. They saw Worn Wanderers, and they're like, oh, this game's amazing, but it's not good for us. But there's a good chance that they might go, oh, you'd be good for so-and-so if you were trying to sign with a publisher. You know what I mean? I mean, there's just so many people in the industry that it's like, yeah, we're not going to make money off of you, but you know where you could succeed, and they're going to point you in that direction.
Yeah, 100%.
You know?
Tim, who was the dude on your Discord like earlier this week who said, I met with a publisher and he said, oh, you're like 99% of the way to publishing your game. I shouldn't step in, right?
Yeah.
Good luck to you. You've got all of your ducks in a row. Go make money, right? Like, what other industry can you find where people are like, oh, hey, you're going to do great, and I'm not going to step in and make an easy buck, right? It's,
yeah, that was Paul from Gem Time Games, right? And
yeah,
he's gonna, and I just, this is an industry where you really need good guys, right? Because here's the thing, Dennis, spoiler alert, odds are you're not going to become a billionaire because of Worn Wanderers. I don't want to be the guy to tell you that, but you might get a game published. You know what I mean? You might be able to have, and that is an accomplishment. And the thing is I mean, if you're lucky, you're the next Richard Garfield, right? And you've got the next Magic the Gathering collectible game. That is a 1 in a million. But the thing is that there are people in this industry. There's people you're going to talk to. They're going to help you at least be successful. You know, and you know, at the very least, be successful, and at the very least, want you to succeed. Because guess what? All of these people in this industry are gamers, and they want to play games, and they want to play new games. And whether that fits their companies, you know, like what they're doing, maybe not. But guess what? They probably know somebody whose it does. You know, and you know, and just there's so much value in not only being a good dude, but like knowing good people in this hobby and again, right? It's not like you're just making a rethemed Wingspan, you know, or you know, you're not just making a generic worker placement game. You know, you are working on something that is totally unique and left field, and it is so brave it's brave for anybody to put anything they create. Because listen, I fancy when I was especially younger, playing a lot of like D&D and Call of Cthulhu, you talked about that earlier. I would write a bunch of campaigns, but I would be so bashful about like what I would put out there, and like I would only expose certain story ideas and theme ideas to like very close friends, because you're just very shy about, you know, or very protective and maybe not even confident. But like, I have so much respect for people that put together a game and develop it and put a lot of time into it. And then on top of that, put it out to the public, you know what I mean? And you subject yourself to like other people and their opinions and their thoughts. And these people, you know, you might go to a publisher or designer, and they're going to talk to you about it, and they're going to be brutally honest, you know, and you've got to be okay with that. You've got to be like ready to deal with that. And it's
and not just publishers, right? The game's changed, right? And that like a lot of games get crowdfunded, right? And you don't just subject it to the publishers, you subject it to all of the public at once, right? And you have to deal with that. But you know, like we truly believe, right? And again, like to circle back to our core principles, right? Game design is an art. I think it's really underappreciated, right? There's been a lot of talk recently about like, you know, The Last of Us is like the pinnacle of video game storytelling, right? Like this is an art, right? This is the height of video game art, right? Is Last of Us. And I don't disagree at all, right? But I'm just glad it's kind of put this like video game as art conversation into play, right? Because I think there's a lot of that going on in board games, and it doesn't get addressed, right? Like board game design is an art, and you can phone it in, you can reskin your game for the 10 millionth time. I'm not going to name names, right? And market it and say like, this is a new game, buy a new copy of the new game, right? And we'll make a buck, and like, is that artistic? Arguably not. It's the same thing as it's as much art as like your pop vinyl collectible figures.
Right.
But like, there are real artists out on the front lines of game design saying like, what is a game? What can it be? How do I push those boundaries? And I think that's beautiful. I really like, that's another love that I have for game design. Bob, can you like the game and not like the art? Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking about like the visual art, 100%, I know that like a lot of games could, be equally like fantasy and sci-fi. And I know some people who like, I don't play fantasy games or I don't play sci-fi games. Right. But the game mechanic goes up if you're able to abstract it.
Right.
But I'm talking about like the game design in itself, right? Like, where are the new bounds that we can push? Does it make you feel right? And like, art isn't art if you put it out there and it doesn't make somebody feel right. So you talk about like bravery of putting a game out there, getting exposure from the audience. And if there are people out there who hate Worn Wanderers, there will be people who are like, oh, this is a stupid idea. You're a bad person for making it.
Yeah. And not just we hate your game, but you're a monster. Why are you such a terrible person that you made this?
Yes. I know it beyond a shadow of a doubt, because the point of art is to make people feel. And I don't think I'm doing my job as an artist if people don't feel, right? Some people will love it. I'm glad. I'm validated. But the fact that other people will hate it is no less validating, right? The fact that it makes them feel things means that I'm doing my job as a game designer and as an artist, right? To push boundaries, to challenge perceptions, to make people feel. And I'm happy to do that, right? That is a huge part of the joy for me. I think it's a huge part of the joy for any game designer, whether they realize it explicitly or not.
Sure. Actually, I have to go into this because Bob kind of brought it up tangentially. I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but there was a review that I was not in on that the people on the show that reviewed a game didn't love the art. And here's the thing is I had commented, I have not played the game. I do not love the art for this game. There's my number one game of all time. I hate the artwork for. Full disclosure, Concordia. Concordia is my favorite game of all time. It's always now. Dennis, you might walk up to me tomorrow and ask me what my favorite game is, and it might be different than Concordia, but Concordia is always in my top 3. Okay, same. So the box art for Concordia, terrible. Had never even given Concordia a thought because of the box art. It's terrible. Same. I hate it. But it's one of my all-time favorite games. Probably will be always one of my all-time favorite games. Yeah. So there was a review done where we critiqued the art, and the people that made the game did not love that we had commentary on the art. Here's the thing is art, and I said this to them, artwork does not necessarily affect my gameplay experience, but it does affect whether I will pull that game off the shelf on my own and look at it.
Oh, okay. 100%. Look, this is going to get me a lot of hate from a very small portion of people. I buy my beers based on the label.
Oh, right? Sure. Like,
sure. I love a craft beer, but the only craft beers that I will really pick up and look at are ones that like the label drew me in. Right. That's an unfortunate reality of marketing, right? Is like, you can have the best craft brew of all time.
So that means you've definitely had some zombie dust then?
No. I said I will pick it up and look at it. I'm not an IPA guy. If it's malty, I'm all for it. But like anything very hoppy it's not my style. But I cannot tell you how many IPAs I've picked up, said, oh, this is an IPA, I'm not interested, and put it back. Right. How many malt beers, right? Or how many, like, really good, like, interesting flavor profiles have I passed up because the label was blocked?
Dude,
Right?
dude,
Like,
exactly.
same with games,
To
right?
that-
And that's the crazy thing about the game I'm indirectly referencing is that it was everybody that reviewed the game absolutely loved it. They just didn't 100% love the artwork. And because of that, we kind of got killed on their Discord channel because of that. It's like, oh, hey, they loved your game. And then the conversation immediately digressed into how people that talked about the game didn't love the artwork. And it's like, I mean, dude, it happens, like I'm not saying it's 100% of the experience, but like you said, right? How many beers have you picked up and looked at? And if that flavor profile matched your interests, that's going in your shopping cart.
Right.
So
Loved it, right?
a couple points I got to add to there.
Do
So
it, Mike.
one, art is the first impression. It's the first thing you see. It's got to elicit some kind of feeling, like Dennis keeps saying. Like, it's the first impression. It's the first thing you see.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the box in Concordia actively made me not pursue it. And then one of my favorite reviewers gushed over the game, and then I realized, oh, I'm an idiot for avoiding this game because of its art. But it's subjective. What you like, I may not like, and vice versa. And that's okay. We're all going to have different tastes, and what you find appealing, I may not. And that's fine. Also, you create content, artists create content, we create content. People are very likely to dislike some of the content we create. It's already happened.
It's a guarantee.
And that's fine. You can have a totally different opinion. None of us really, the three of us that reviewed Endless Winter, it fell flat for all of us. But like, lots of people love this game. And like, we had 3 people that are just like, this game fell flat for us, guys. We didn't get bashed for that, but that's just how things are. They are subjective, and we're just not always going to have the same opinion.
Yeah.
Number 2, Three Floyds, the company that makes that Zombie Dust beer that I talked about, they've been making that exact same recipe of beers for years now. They changed their art style to that skeleton kind of dark Zombie Dust type art, and then they became one of the most popular breweries in the United States.
Yeah.
So that first opinion based off of art matters a lot, not just in board games, but in beer as well.
Well, so interesting point though, right? Like, if you consider, we're talking about Concordia, right? You guys don't like the art, but it made you feel. You looked at the art and you thought, I don't like this, right? Here we are talking about it.
Right.
All free marketing for them because they put art out that made you feel, right? Like, how many games have you seen that just had completely, like, you never even registered it, and you can't think of it now because you never registered it.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Like that is just, to circle back to game design is art, right? Make people feel things, right?
Right.
Even if it's bad, whatever you put out, like you said, some people will hate it. You have to accept that as an artist and move on. And if you make people feel either positively or negatively, you've done your job as an artist, right? And then, in that same vein that we've been talking about, like, things will come from that, right? Free marketing for Concordia because you hate the art, but the game is solid, right? Or great marketing for another game where, like, the mechanics are meh, but you love the art, right? It gets talked about. It makes people feel. And that's,
I can't find my Concordia somewhere. I'm looking too fast. I'm hurrying.
Oh.
But let me just pick a game that everybody famously hates the art for, right?
Yeah.
Terraforming Mars. Really, really good game. Terrible art. Oh, look, this is perfect because Jason. Before
there's nothing like going through a gallery of stock photos to select art for your game, right? And being like,
No,
it's like, I will say, as a publisher, I have a newfound appreciation for it because art cost is like, we designed a game where the only art was like the character pins,
right.
and it is still far and away our most our largest expense.
The biggest part of your
spent
budget
more on art than anything else we've done for this game thus far, with maybe the exception of marketing still to come. Right. But like, I get it. I get going through stock photos and being like, this is cheap. We're going to take it. This is the art for a card. Right. Especially because how many cards does TFM have? Right. But yeah.
So, okay. A game with famously bad art, but very, very popular, right? Very highly rated on BGG. Probably always will be. And then here's a game that is not only great, but has amazing art. I mean, how many people, hold on, you don't have to love Scythe, but how many people will give Scythe a look because of the artwork?
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
I get it.
I want to like Scythe so much because the art is amazing.
Mike, get your tissues out. Dennis, please continue.
It's just not my style of game.
I get it.
Very deceptive. You look at it and you think that is a game that's up my alley, right? This is like a 4X, like heavy strategy combat.
We got mechs going. We're gonna battle. No, you're not gonna battle.
Euro game, and you're like, I got tricked. I don't like Euro games. Why did you waste my time? But like that said, because the art of that game is amazing, they just announced a new game. Am I gonna
Expeditions
give that game a try? I absolutely will, because I like the art. I'm drawn in by it.
Yeah.
I love Euro games, so Scythe was like everything I hoped it would be.
Scythe,
it's one of my favorites.
Scythe is a unicorn because it's a Euro game with good art. Most Euro games are, and it's nothing against Clemens Franz, but it's a most Euro games are drawn by Clemens Franz, and Clemens Franz looks like medieval style artwork, which works great for Orleans and
yes, like putting people with a broken wrist on the cover of the box.
Yeah. It's great for games.
That hand bothers me so much. It's the only part. It's that hand just floating in the air at an awkward angle.
And Misery Cave.
Did you claim to not be that nerdy earlier in this podcast, Mike? Because I feel like that was just such a you surrendered that card. Like that's your nerd card issue.
I've ripped on that box cover so many times just because of the awkward hand angle.
It's just such a weirdly specific reference.
It stands out to me. It made me feel something because I still talk about that hand angle. I'm telling you, it just sticks out to me as like, man, that is an awkward box cover.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike Clemens Franz art. I think it's better on some boxes than others. But I don't dislike it.
Yeah. Well, and as we fly by the 3-hour mark, right? There's also an element too of not just like, does the art make you feel, but does the art match the game itself? Right. Because there are lots of games that have amazing art that just does not jive with the game, right?
True. Oh, absolutely.
Miss, right? There's like a clash going on.
Ooh, Tim, have we done that list? Did we do gorgeous stinkers? Did we do good-looking games that aren't that good? I don't think we did.
Good-looking games that aren't that good? Oh.
Yeah.
I don't think we have. Bora Bora.
I love that he did this because I find an excuse to mention Bora Bora in every stream I'm in.
Well, hold on.
It's just a thing now.
It's not that you find an excuse. It's anytime you are building up to a game, that is my default guess is Bora Bora. Even if it is clearly not going to be Bora Bora. It is.
I am a massive Stefan Feld fan. I got started with him very early. So dry Euros, not a problem for me.
And I gotta say, I'm gonna assume this is still Mike. Listen, Mike, I love Tapestry. It is not a Civ builder. It is not. I get it. I get it. It was advertised as Civ builder. It's not a Civ builder. But I love Tapestry. So
I enjoyed it.
Bora Bora.
Play it again.
Is great. I'm trying to find my copy of Orleans. an embarrassing humble brag. It's like I've got games on shelves like all around me. And I'm
No,
like, where's my
100%, right? Too many games that you can't find the one you're looking for.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, all right, I can hear what they're saying. So I'm gonna run around and look. And then when
You
Mike's
know-
like,
when Sam was over here a week and a half ago during that
love
event
this.
that I
I
talked
love what you're
about.
about. I love what you're about to say, Mike.
Oh, wow. So everybody had left, and I offered Sam a place to stay. I'm like, don't spend the money on hotel, man. I got a spare bedroom. Just crash at my house this weekend. And I had only met Sam one other time before this. So again, if Tim vouches for him, he's good by me.
Sure.
So after that Saturday, me and Sam were just kind of chatting about the day and his game and just about the board game industry and stuff like that. And at one point, he says, you don't have nearly as many games as I thought you would. And I'm like, why would you think I would have more? Is it because I'm on the show? He's like, yeah, I kind of, yeah, I just, it's so weird. Yes, both of them. The one guy's like, hey, the other guy's like, oh, my wrist is broken. But I've at no point have I ever claimed to be an expert or a hoarder. I don't spend a lot of time on Kickstarter. I don't get fear of missing out. I've culled my collection multiple times to get rid of what I considered fluff. And so I try to keep it to a reasonable amount, including games that I will actually get to the table. I've bought games that sat for 5 years, and I said, if I haven't played it now, I never will, and I sold them. And so it was just funny that, yeah, he expected, because I'm here, that I've got a massive collection. It's not that big. Like, I have about 200 games. I've sold 50 or 60, so it could be much bigger, but I just, having a gigantic collection is not for me. It'll continue to grow, but I don't even know if I'll eclipse that like 500 threshold. Tim's at like 800, Bob's at like 1,000. I just don't know if I'll ever get to that point. It feels excessive to me.
I don't bemoan you a well curated collection, right? Like there's quality over quantity for sure. Do I have some games in my collection that like I don't enjoy and probably won't play in? 100%. Am I a hoarder who won't be able to get rid of those games? Also 100%.
I don't have a problem pulling the trigger on the ones that aren't getting any love. Oh God.
Oh, this was my roughest game experience ever.
It was rough.
But it's funny because you talk about the art and the importance of art, and of all of the boxes that you have on that wall, my eyes keep going to that one, and I was like, what is that game? I can't quite tell. And then you pull it out and you're like, this is not a good game. Nonetheless, my eyes have been drawn to it all night.
The components
of
in
the game up off a shelf and read about it and maybe take it home.
Yeah, the components in the art are fantastic, but we played a learning game at 5 and it was way too long, and the Kickstarter variable player powers were broken.
Yeah.
And it had a lot going on, and it took us like 4.5 hours. It's like, whoa, that's too much for a worker placement.
It was miserable. In theory, conceptually, it's an amazing game, but
great on paper, not in practice.
Yeah.
I'll be one of the first ones to tell you that I prefer elegant games. I very much respect a game that can take a minimal rule set and give me difficult decisions to make and a different experience every time I play it.
Well, okay. So hold on. We established neither of you guys know Quarto, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to fix that, because if you want to talk about elegant games, that is one of the most simple games I've ever seen. That's also mind bending.
What's that?
But yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly, Mike. Right? Like you talk about the art, right? Like you kind of have to respect like a Jackson Pollock, right? Full 42. I agree 100%. Back in the day, before some weird lawsuits, they used to pay us for working shows in board games. And so it was an awesome excuse to be like, I'm going to spend $300 on a flight to Indianapolis and work Gen Con. And like, could I justify spending $300 on board games? No, but I can justify spending $300 on a flight to work for a weekend to get $300 worth of board games. So yes, going to a convention is a good excuse to get the games for sure. Although, to circle back, I do like to support the LGS.
Great Wall, prime example of sometimes having every mechanic in a game is not going to make it a better game.
But there's so many good mechanics in Great Wall. So many great mechanics.
And yet it falls so flat.
if you can't do something with just the bare minimum, right? Like, I don't know, right? That's what I was saying. It's like Jackson Pollock or the guy who did the cityscapes in like bare bones, white and black, with like, squares of yellow and blue, right? They're very minimalistic paintings. And of course I'm blanking on his name right now. But like very famous artists who did work with traditionally very little, right? Like paint splatters or just lines, right? You almost have to marvel at it and go like, how did you become a famous artist using just the most basic elements of design, right? It's so much more impressive than somebody who, does like grand Baroque paintings of, like the Sistine Chapel is amazing. I'm not going to tell you it's not, right? But like the fact that it is a famous artwork and so is this random dude going like, psh, 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 right? Like it's baffling.
Well,
it's baffling.
well,
you have to marvel at a game with elegance.
So Dennis, I'm going to bring it back around to Star Wars. Okay.
Yeah.
So the original Star Wars trilogy is so great because of all of the limitations and restrictions that they had put upon them. They were forced to be creative to come up with these practical effects to pull off amazing things. And then when Lucas come, and now you may be of the age where the prequels you absolutely love, but the prequels came at a time where Lucas did not have the restrictions put upon him, and so he could just kind of do whatever he wanted. And they wandered and they drifted a little bit, and are criticized for that, right? So I feel like limitations in a lot of things force you to think outside of the box, become more creative, and develop a stronger idea, right? And put a more refined thing out than, because here's the thing, Dennis, you could come up with your own like great grand story for something, and somebody would be like, nah, I guess whatever. But if you put it out and then it's refined, and you're challenged on it, and you're forced to like answer some really tough questions about it, and then you really like, make some tough decisions and some tough cuts, but you really like sharpen that steel down, and now it's a katana, right? You folded that metal, 100 times, and now you have this amazing, thing that could just cut through diamonds because you've honed it so much. And I just feel like limitations and restrictions really breed good design and good development.
Yeah. 100%. Right. That's always been my mantra, right? Of the restrictions breed creativity. Right. Yeah. And like, just in case anybody's hanging around into hour 3 of this, I'm gonna plug Wanderers again. You should. Right? Like I started with this idea of like, what would a wearable game look like? Right. And that is a huge design restriction. I was like, okay, so I want enamel pins, but like, you need to display changing game state, right? Like the game needs to change from one turn to another. Otherwise it's not a game, right? It's a static work of art. How on earth do you change the information on an enamel pin? That's fixed. Right. There can't be a board. People can't move things around because then you have to constantly be taking it off and putting it back on. And if there's one thing I hate about enamel pins, it's like putting them all on a lanyard. That's the worst part. Do it once and be done with it. And that was really like, I wrestled for years with that idea of like, how do you design a game with these restrictions? And I'm really proud of what we came up with. I think it is very like, it is very creative because it works within those very strict confines. So like I agree wholeheartedly.
Well,
if you want
there's nothing harder than to create without borders. Because like for example, right? Like, well, what show do you want to do? I'm like, holy shit, now I got to come up with something. You know what I mean? And it's like without parameters, put in, please continue, right? You are trying to design a game that you can wear on a lanyard. What an amazing restriction you have put on yourself to start, right? Like right from Jump Street. Like that's where you're at. Please continue. I did not mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're good. I just was going to circle back, right? You talk about Lucas and the prequels. First of all, I was at the right age to fully get into episode 1, right? So like, Anakin was my jam.
Yeah, I get it. I respect it.
As a computer animation major at Purdue, I have a very vivid memory of a dude. We had a speaker come and talk to us about the effects that CGI have had on the wow factors in movies. And I'm assuming that you guys have seen The Great Escape.
Yep.
Right? Okay, cool. Great Escape, right? Steve McQueen does this like insane, right? Like escape of the motorcycle, right? Over this like, giant jump. And like at its core, this is a thing that actually happened. There was a dude on a bike who risked his life for this movie, right? To make this piece of art. And that could have gone terribly. Dude could have died. It happens with unfortunate frequency in movies that like people performing practical stunts get seriously injured, right? And then he compared that to I think it's Matrix 2 when Trinity rides the motorcycle off the front of the semi. And, like they've stripped it all away to it's her on a green screen going like on a bike, and then they edit it all in back. And he's like, which is more impressive to you? It's like the Matrix scene looked more realistic, right? It wasn't shot from 10 million miles away, and like you were right in the action, but like ultimately, like there's that seed of dishonesty in it, right? Compared to like in The Great Escape when they perform those stunts, right? So you talk about like the reality and like, George Lucas,
you're talking to a movie guy, so you were preaching my language.
Yeah, like as a computer graphics technology major at Purdue, they brought us up on this idea of like, don't use it as a crutch, because if you use it as a crutch, right, like it's gonna fall flat. Ooh, that's amazing. I have not heard of phobia, but I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. Yeah, designing a game for blindness is a whole challenge. I've always considered like, if I lose my hands, could I still do my job as like a programmer, right? That's my day job. Right. If I lose my sight, could I design games? Right. So like that's incredible. I'm definitely gonna have to check that out because I haven't heard of that one. But like that's a design seed that I turn over in my head with some frequency. Like, how do you play a game with someone who doesn't have sight?
Yeah. No, not to derail you, but Mike just made a really good point though. Like these are the kind of restrictions and limitations that because again, right, that is a person that was like set out to design a game that they could play with a blind person. You set out to design a wearable game, and so I mean it's right on topic with like your whole motivation and your desire, to create that sort of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm glad that comes across, right? That was part of the intent, right? Part of that intent of meeting people, right? Because we've talked so much about like you played a random game with a person and it altered the course of your life, right? And that, just to circle back and put too fine a point on it, right? Is like if you go to a gaming convention and you've never been and you're wearing this, you meet another person who's wearing it, that person could be your next best friend, right? You just haven't met him yet. So we wanted to put something out there that would allow people to strengthen the fabric of our gaming community, right? To a point where you can form these connections that have had such a profound impact on all of us here, and a lot of us in the chat too.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, right? Is like this whole community, right? All of our lists, none of our lists are solo experiences, right? Nothing on our lists have been like, well, I was by myself and I did this thing. No, all of these things have been enabled, empowered by other people in our lives, whether it's family members or whether it is strangers, or maybe it's just people
Or whether
that
it's
we,
your partner's family members, right?
yeah. I mean, you just you just
All
never.
coming over to Mike's house.
I mean, that's it, man. That's it. You just never know. You never
know when
know.
you can host a family get together.
Yeah, Mike hosted a neighborly family reunion, and with Sam Stockton there, and
Great
there's
opportunity.
and like 3 other people were invited. Well, hold on. In my defense, like 30 other people were invited. It's just that the 30 that showed up all were associated with me. Much to his detriment. But oh, hold on.
So be it.
Jonathan's got a thing. Oh, see, so Jonathan's going meta with the poor special effects of Matrix Reloaded, and then Revolution was the third one.
That's honestly pretty amazing. I haven't heard that. I'm here for it. I've never heard meta-analysis of Matrix 3 before.
I mean, I'll take it, right? Well, that's technically Matrix 2, but but here's the thing: is like Jonathan, the Ginger Scholar. That's Jonathan. That's our friend Jonathan. Jonathan, I know because of a game night group. Spencer, one of the guys that shows up on our show very frequently. That is a friend that I have made, and Jonathan always has. He comes from a totally different perspective. You know what I mean? He's always got different viewpoints than I do. And I don't always agree with him, but like, I mean, dude is always shining a different light on things. And, and that's the benefit of having a variety of people in your life, and just getting different viewpoints, different perspectives, different opinions, and different values, different games that he likes. Like Jonathan and I love a lot of the same games, but
I don't know where I was going with that one.
So it's interesting. I had kind of tossed the subject around in my head because I was always wondering if it had come up, right? I think, in and among the community of gaming, right, we have this weirdly connected community that, like we mentioned before, like is progressive and is really accepting of lots of people, right? But at the same time too is just like it's not like people who aren't progressive aren't welcome. There's like a lot of an entire spectrum, right? I feel like the world gets so divided over side A or side B, right? How you stand on one issue versus another, and it's tragic. I feel like that's like divide and conquer, right? But we get this like common ground, no matter what your like political opinions are or religious opinions are, right? You can meet over games, right? And you've got that shared seed, right? To get exposure to people that you normally wouldn't, right? And that's really like in all of the studies that they've done over like racism or sexism or anything, it's just repeated exposure to people with different viewpoints to yours is what brings us closer, right? It's
Absolutely.
easy to vilify people you don't interact with daily, but once you interact with them, you realize, oh, this person isn't so bad, right? They're not Satan.
That's true. We don't like what we don't know.
Yeah.
And all that really comes down to is just being open to new people and experiences, and the people that aren't willing to put themselves into new environments and new experiences and meet new people are really kind of missing out on life. Like, so some people choose to be closed-minded and do everything they can to maintain that. You're not helping yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Right. And you don't have to have anything in common with somebody to sit across the table from them and say, I'm going to draw a card. Right.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
That
Other
is.
than, you both enjoy
Absolutely one of my favorite things about it. All phones to the side, all differences to the side, all politics to the side. You and I have an hour and a half, and we're going to go mano a mano using the same rule set. Let's see what happens without any distractions.
Yeah.
That's what,
That's the beauty of it, for sure. Right? Good shared meeting space. Everybody, regardless of any other opinions we might share, we can still bond over the games.
Definitely. You apparently had to get something to soak up all that booze you've been drinking there, Tim?
I needed a snack.
Yeah, no, I don't know how we end this elegantly. I will say, like I told you, I could ramble. And in my review of past live streams, I think, is this record setting? Do you guys have that number?
No.
Mike's got the number.
The full 42, the one who has been commenting all night. Our longest stream was with him, and that one eclipsed 4 hours.
Woo!
Now, yes, Bob, a 2-hour show. 2 2-hour shows. I don't know how to segue this elegantly either. Tim and I are definitely more comfortable in the 2 to 3 hour range because Tim gets up early, and Wednesday is my longest day of the week. So we kind of we picked the one day of the week where it's like, well, but we're making it work. We love doing it. So
no, I definitely don't
fun.
object. I have 2 downstairs neighbors. One of them will talk with me until the cows come home. And their partner is amazing at a graceful, it's been great talking to you, but we really should go now. And she has saved the day so many times just because she's able to drop that the conversation's done. You're great. We're great, but we need to stop talking. Right.
Right.
And that's
my wife.
I've had. So I've really learned to appreciate that in my downstairs neighbor, just because it's like, oh, okay, so that's what that would look like if I had that in my repertoire. So it's funny because Thursdays for me, there's actually an organization I found in Brooklyn. So we talked long ago, hours ago at this point. My number 5 was, right, my dad taught me about the importance of learning lessons through Dungeons and Dragons. My character dies because I decided to charge into a room I was not well prepared for. There's a place in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Game Lab. That's an after school camp for kids that is amazing because it's literally, we work with kids from, I think 6 up to 13. After school, they come and they play, and we play board games, and either, talk about what could be changed about the rules, how you would improve it, what you liked, what you didn't like, or, there's Dungeons and Dragons, or, it's just we take all of those awesome life lessons that you can learn through games, and we give them to kids, right? We just play games with them, and we work on the art of game design with them. And that's my Thursdays. I set aside time once a week to go into the city to do that. So regardless of how late I stay up,
you're being a champion.
It's a lot of fun. It does help that I really like working with kids too, right? I love kids. Kids are the best. So you combine gaming, which I love, with kids, and it's oh, cool. This is a natural area for me. But yeah, regardless of how much sleep I get tonight, I will have to wake up in the morning and go work with kids, which I've done with a migraine before, and I wouldn't recommend it.
Oh yeah.
We've been had. That definitely happened.
It really did.
We avoided obscure 90s movies by talking about wildly popular 90s movies, right, through Star Wars. But I'd be willing to bet that is an equally dark hole.
Listen, Mike isn't the movie maven.
Actually, no, I do. I have seen enough of your guys' podcasts to know that all of the movie references go right over Mike's head. That does tickle me.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them do.
Yeah, a decent movie buff.
But I am before I got into board games as a hobby, I was a movie fanatic. That is how I bonded probably with my dad like the best is our love of film, and books. And I still love movies. Back when physical media was more of a thing instead of a board game collection, I had thousands of VHSs and DVDs in my movie collection. Um, yes, Mike, I saw them all. There were none on my shelf of shame. And so I was a movie fanatic. I still am, but now it's all digital. And my wife's like, we don't need all that crap in our house. And I'm like, you're right. Because you can stream it all now, But so now I just fill all that empty shelf space that would have been movies
With
now with
that.
board games. With board games. Whoops. She thought she was fixing one problem, but all she did was create a vacuum. And as we all know, nature abhors a vacuum. And so we now fill it with board games. But no, man, the thing is though, is like I am the diehard movie fanatic, but Mike has Mike and I, cross over in music. We cross over in our love of sports because Mike and I are the only guys on the show, the guy out of the guys that do the show that give a damn about sports. So Mike and I will show up and we'll show up and we'll be talking about football. We'll be talking about baseball. We'll be talking about basketball. We'll talk about college sports. Like we're in. Mike and I are just omnivores when it comes to sports. Because of Mike, I'm trying to get into hockey now. Not you, Mike, but Mike Giuliano, right? I'm going to get into hockey. I'm going to bring that up. But
So as we approach the witching hour, it's been fun, guys. Sorry, as you were.
See, and
Just
Jason's like a golden age film lover, which is amazing. And I love it. That's where I could actually shore up some of my movie knowledge, to be completely honest. But
well, that's the funny thing is my girlfriend has seen nothing from the 70s on. But she's had a shared love of movies. That's how she and her grandmother connected a lot, was watching movies from the 50s.
Sure.
So I literally will quote Jurassic Park and it will go over her head, which as a CGI buff breaks my heart.
Right?
Because how have you not seen Jurassic Park? Right. But she'll mention a movie from, the 50s, right? We sat down together to watch, I'm about to embarrass myself. Bringing Up Baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the name of it. Which I'd never seen before, and she'd seen dozens of times and could quote.
Right.
It's not that she's not a movie buff; it's just that she's a very specific era, and everything beyond that is Greek to her.
But you know what? Bringing Up Baby, right? There's so many amazing movies that people will never see now or have that brought to their attention that were made back in that era. I mean, I've been trying to go back and watch more Humphrey Bogart and some of the film noir stuff because I like that stuff, and, if you watch Frank Capra, from that era, an amazing director, obviously It's a Wonderful Life. But I mean, these guys have there's so many amazing movies, and the way that the Hollywood studio system used to work back then versus now is incredible. I'm obsessed with movies. I love movies. It was my first love was movies. So I listen to more podcasts about movies than I do about board games. But and board games are my main jam right now. But if you were to look at my podcast feed, it's Notre Dame football and movies, and then podcasts board game podcasts down the line. From there,
it's interesting that you say that because you talk about so many movies from the old days have really fallen off in viewership, right? And that's as we go, more content gets created, right? And stuff falls off, right? Like every decade we get removed from the 50s, right? The number of movies from the 50s that people can recall dwindles until as you know, you get this like ultra refined list of like, these are the 3 best movies from an entire decade, right?
Right.
Thousands of movies, only these survive, right? And you like, if you listen to like 90s radio, right, you're gonna hear the same, you know, 200 songs over and over again. And in the you know, in 2040, that's gonna be the top 10 songs, right? Because they'll have like the best radio of like the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, right? And that'll get, you know, conglomerated and refined. And it's like, you know, to keep it somewhat board game centric, I always wonder, right, like if board games are this art now that's kind of in this golden age of like, there's, you know, 3,000 games getting published every year, right? 10 years down the line, what's gonna there's Nixit making a good decision, going to sleep at a reasonable hour.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. He's a regular. I love him for it. So no, but no, you're right though, and I do wonder to that effect. Does Board Game Geek affect this, right? Because now we've got like this collator of data, right? Like, you know, they've refined all this data and they're bringing it all in. And there's games still that are from, you know, that are 10 plus years old in the top 100, right?
Yeah.
And so how do they filter out over the next 20 years? You know, how do they?
Well, you know, and to that degree too, like what are the classics, right? Like, I mean, obviously, you know, like we just celebrated or are about to, I don't know, it's a little foggy, Magic's 30th anniversary.
Right.
Right. We've done, like, I was really interested to see the, like relaunch of Dark Tower, right? Which was like a classic for people, right? And to the point where like they can launch a really successful campaign now on the nostalgia of an old game, right?
Right.
You know, in the same way that we can like re-release an old movie in theaters or do you know, we can remake Aladdin. That's a bad example. Aladdin wasn't well received. What was it, like Beauty and the Beast, I think went over well, right? That's them making a 20-year-old movie over again, right? We remake a 20-year-old board game over again and it goes really well, right? So like, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to peer into this. Like, I don't think we have a grasp on it yet because board gaming isn't quite old enough, I think, to have those like those staples and foundations, right? I mean, obviously, you know, we can all point to Dungeons and Dragons and say like, this is gonna last. This is a staple that's defined the industry. We can all point to Magic and say like, card gaming became a thing, and this game will probably never die. You know, in the realm of like, you know, human conception, right? I mean, you know, 10,000 years from now, maybe, but like, you know, in the next 200 years, I think it'll go strong.
But in our lifetime and our children's lifetime, at the very least, right?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, 100%, right? Like what? I don't know. I've challenged myself with that thought exercise before. Like, what lasts and why, right? Especially, you know, from just like we talked a little bit about Mike's board game exchange magic, right? Trading in like copies of out of print games for other out of print games just before they go to reprint, right? Like I'm a collector, right? Everybody likes getting a good deal. And so you got to wonder, like, if I went out and picked up like 50 copies of a board game and just put them in storage, right? And sat on them for a decade, would they be worth anything? Right? It's such an interesting question of like, is this worth investing in? Right? In the way
if they're all Z-Man games, yes, because they won't get reprinted. So,
oh yeah, no, that's fair. That hits.
Well, you know, what game is going to be the Wizard of Oz, right? Something that's almost 100 years old that is still heralded, you know, as formative, you know, for so many people and generations. You know, I mean, you just don't know.
It is intriguing, man. It is very intriguing, right? Game design is an art. 100 years from now, only some art will last, right? We don't even know what Leonardo's last name was. We just know that he was from Vinci, so he's Leonardo da Vinci, right? Because his art was, you know, timeless, right? Which of these game designers whose names we're bandying around right now is going to be timeless? Who's going to define it? in 100
Well,
years.
let me just tell you, Leonardo was a Ninja Turtle, and none of them had last names.
It's true.
That's
Fair
all
enough.
I'm saying.
Oh
And-
man.
You know, and some of the comments, right? Ticket to Ride, Catan. I mean, maybe, but I think even Catan and Ticket to Ride have now been overshadowed. You know, and while very important for their time, right? Not to take anything away from Alan Moon, you know, or whoever designed Catan. I apologize because I don't know off the top of my head. You know, not to take away from those guys. You know, those guys are fundamental building blocks on this industry. You know, not just for designers, right, but for gamers too. Those games, whether you like them or not, they have set up core designs and principles that so many other games have built up off of. And but you know, like nobody's gonna, you know, people may not remember, you know, the first movies that were made, but the ones that like revolutionized it from that point, I mean, those are the ones that get remembered, you know. And again, they might have been making movies for 30 years before Wizard of Oz comes out, right? They were making movies for 40 years before Wizard of Oz comes out. But Wizard of Oz, holy shit, like, all right, you know. And so like you're gonna have things that are gonna just set up and you know, and maybe Catan does stand out. Maybe Catan's a good one. I think Catan is more likely than Ticket to Ride, but I think it's because Catan has other variations that are different enough that do different things and that allow it to stand out.
Wait,
But-
you mean reissuing the same game with a different map
Well,
a dozen times is not standout?
You mean like Ticket to Ride? Yeah, you know.
It's an interesting. Like, I do agree, right? I mean, I think like, and I'm not bashing Catan here. Like, you know, it's got a couple of flaws for sure. I really like it. If I'm being honest, it's just a good, solid game. I don't play it a ton because you know, I did it enough in college that like I feel like I've got a good idea of what I'm gonna get into. You know, but like in the same way, if you look at great works of art history, a lot of them are garbage, right? Like there's some art where you're like, that art is bad, but it was like, oh, this is a really revolutionary use of perspective, right? And like this influenced other artists down the line, right? Or you know, like a lot of artists who fail commercially, like you talk about, like you know, to bring it to music, right? Like the Ramones were not a commercially successful band by like most metrics, but then you like look at this list of artists who are like, oh, when I made music and made, you know, my first $1 million making music, right? Everyone knows my music. I loved the Ramones growing up, right? So much so that, like, you know, Bono's got a song about him sitting at Joey Ramone's bedside, talking about like, this was my life's, you know, greatest moment. Like formative works, even if they're not successful or, you know, groundbreaking or stand up to the test of time, still have value just in the fact that they're formative.
Right.
Mike's been buffering for 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. He's okay. Mike, blink twice if you're okay. If you need Giuliano to call the police for you, blink 3 times rapidly. But no, Dennis, you make an amazing point, right? Is that there are going to be, to use the music example, there are going to be bands that you absolutely love. And then you see them talk in an interview and they're going to mention a band that nobody's ever heard of that was 100% formative for them, you know, and inspired them. And that could be a band, you know, odds are that band was not a one-hit wonder. Odds are that band was just an undiscovered, you know, group or a performer that had put out a ton of stuff, you know, and yeah, you know, it's really interesting. It's a really good philosophical or scientific discussion over like what persists, what floats to the top, and why does it float to the top, and stay around, for years and years, even if it is not as good. I will use the example as, and Mike knows this, I'm a diehard like blues music fan. Okay. And, rock and roll fundamentally got its start in blues music, right?
Yep.
I mean, from Elvis to Led Zeppelin to the Rolling Stones. I won't use my father's words and say that they ripped off blues music, but they were inspired by blues music, and borrowed heavily.
Where would we be without Muddy Waters?
100%, man. 100%. And where would Muddy be without Robert Johnson and Blind Lemon Jefferson and guys that came before him? You know, and the thing is like, you don't have to love blues music. You can love Led Zeppelin. You don't have to love Led Zeppelin. You can love Guns N' Roses. You don't have to love Guns N' Roses. You can love Tool. You don't have to love Tool. You can love Ghost. I mean, you could just go down the line of different kinds of musicians that have been inspired and take their inspiration from different things. I mean, a great Nirvana song is an old Leadbelly song. You know what I mean? And it's like, and another Nirvana is a great example because they took a Leadbelly song and they took a David Bowie song. They made it, their own. And if you didn't know if you didn't know The Man Who Sold the World was a David Bowie song, you'd be like, that's an amazing Nirvana song. I love that Nirvana song, but if you do some digging, right, you scratch beneath the surface, and it's not like they stole this stuff. They were inspired. They were paying homage, to these people, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in a generation of people that love Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Stevie Ray Vaughan like is directly, inspired by all these blues guys. So you take the same thing and you apply it to board games, and it's like, I love DC Deck Builder. DC Deck Builder would be nowhere without Dominion, right? I love Clank.
Yeah.
Clank would be nowhere without Dominion. I love Ascension. Ascension would be nowhere without all of the games that came before it that allowed it to improve upon those things and like get better and stronger. And it's really going to be an interesting social experiment to see what persists right through the years. And there's some really interesting parallels that you brought up that put us on a whole different tangent, which, Dennis, is what we do is we go on crazy tangents, which lead to Mike not blinking for 10 minutes while you and I just talk about art and music. And I know Mike knows music, so Mike's just being polite now and letting me talk about music. But I know Mike knows music and is no slouch when it comes to his knowledge and acumen there. But I just took what you were going with art and transposed it over to something I could talk about more intelligently. But yeah, man, I mean, you're not wrong. It's really interesting. Oh shit.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. Right. I had a semester that I had to like get 3 extra credits in to keep my resident assistant job. Right. There was a minimum, like you have to be a full-time student. I only had 2 classes left in my major to take, and I had to fill the other 2, or the 2 other classes. And one of those was a class called Society and Rock and Roll. That was
nice.
Yeah, no, it was a ton of fun. But people called it History of Rock and Roll because basically that's what it was. Is you started with like that's how I learned a lot of the references to which you are alluding, right? Was we started at blues and we went all the way up through rap, really, right? Like rap as an extension of rock and roll, and like how one bled into another with all of the progression along the way of like this is Buddy Holly, the original rock star, and I was like, Buddy Holly is not a rock star, he's not a rock musician, right? And that course really changed my mind, right? But it is mind-blowing to think like you could have one of my good friends actually in New York City is a guy who teaches game design at NYU, right? Like fast forward 5, 10, 15 years, right? We could have history of game design, right? Covering like this was, Catan and this sprung from this, or like, going back even further, like Monopoly, right? Like Monopoly, like the barely a game, right? The thing that we all sort of rue whenever we go to people who say, oh, I play board games. They're like, oh, like Monopoly? It's like, no, not like Monopoly. Right?
Wow.
But in the end, it kind of all comes back to that, right?
Right.
What are we going to be learning, about this foundational period, right? Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it deserves any more waxing poetic over all this mystery, but
No, I love it. I
no, Emerson is not to whom I was referring. Their name is Biswas, Shrang Biswas. Is a professor there who, like, honestly, I swear to God, every time I find an RPG on Kickstarter, they're like, these are the writers we had consult. He is always on there. It is insane. Like, this dude is prolific, but he is brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. You talk like this, I guess, is an honorable mention to board gaming experiences, right? We mentioned this guy Javier, who's like, oh, Dennis is a graphic design major. He'd like to hang out with Weta, right, at their booth. Likewise, he was like, oh, year 2, you're coming back. You like game design. You design your own games. So I'm going to room you with this guy, Sharang, that just designed a game that they bought. Mad Science Foundation is the name of the game. And it's like 8 years. No, it can't be quite that old. It's old, but they published it with Cryptozoic Entertainment, and he showed up at Gen Con to teach it to people and show it to people, and we were roommates that year because Javier, their guy in charge of conventions, was like, "Oh, Dennis would get a lot out of rooming with this guy," and I did. And then at some point, it was like, "Oh, son of a gun! I just moved to New York City. You live in New York City. Like, let's meet up and hang out and play board games together." But I am constantly running into people, sliding glass door. I was talking to somebody at Brooklyn Game Lab about their work in multilingual support for board games. And I was like, who'd be great for you to talk to? You should reach out to this guy. And I started to give her the name, and I was like, Sharang, and she gave me his last name. I was like, oh, so you know him? And he's like, yeah, he taught me at NYU. And I thought, perfect. Okay, Mike's just jumping to the other side there.
Weird.
Spend enough time on the left.
That is weird.
To go to the right.
Yeah, I thought for a second, Mike's like, well, I'm done. Dipped out. No, but I love this stuff, man. I love this stuff. Dennis, I got bad news for you, man. You're gonna have to come back on and just hang out with us again sometime, because
oh no,
this has been too much fun. Here's the thing is, like, I said this to Mike, like, anytime we go like 4 hours, 3.5 hours on a thing, we're having a good time. So I guess we should probably wrap it up, but
yeah, no, I appreciate it. I do. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast. I could definitely keep talking about this for hours and hours, but at some point we all need to be responsible adults here.
Oh my gosh. I know.
If Mike just doesn't fall asleep on camera.
Listen, I'm going to get off of here. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to go to bed. And my wife is going to like roll over and be like, what time is it? And I'm gonna be like, oh no. Yeah, but no, man. I mean, this is what it's all about. Is like, here's the thing: is like when I'm spending time with my friends and we're playing games and we're hanging out and we're doing stuff, I never want it to end. I don't want it to, to stop. Yeah, Bob's a night owl. He works the night shift, so he's being responsible. He's still working. But Dennis, dude, you were a freaking home run. Thank you so much for coming on, being a part of this. Dude, we're going to see you next week anyways. We're going to see you IRL, in real life, in the flesh. We're going to have a great time. I just know it. And this makes it even easier, right? Because now we've just spent like 4 hours hanging out and talking.
Yeah. For real.
There's going to be none of that awkward. So like, what kind of games do you like? Nah, man, we've already busted through all of the ice. All the ice has been destroyed. But tomorrow, what are you talking about, Mike? You're killing. Dude, I would do this live stream every night if I didn't have to get divorced to do it. No, it's amazing. I love it. I really do. I really do. I cherish all of these moments. They're so much fun for me. And Dennis, you came in with a baller topic. You know,
talk about.
it's a good thing we cut it to 5 and not 10. Holy smokes, we'd have been in trouble. This would have been like a 4-parter had we done 10. But Dennis, you were great, man. Thank you so much. We will be in touch. Dennis is in the Discord, the Phantom Dennis. You'll see him in the Discord.
Yeah,
and
you want to talk about my love for episode 1?
Dude, okay. We're gonna carry this over and we're gonna start a chat about the prequels over there. And I know Mike Giuliano needs to be over there because in the full 42, they got like basically like a whole Star Wars thing going. But no, man, you can find Claromancy games, all over the place. Dennis, do me a favor in the Discord. And if you are so inclined, get on the rundown page and share links to your stuff. That's like that's the easiest way to do it. Please do. And because Worn Wanderers looks super cool. I just think it is something that people have got to see. It's really, you explained it very.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard game to demo because it doesn't play like anything else. So like showing it off, your elevator pitch, I'm sure you've had to be creative over the years of working on this.
We've had a lot of experience for sure. We've gone to a lot of shows to pitch this thing. Trial and error. We've gotten there.
Yeah. Wait a minute. What? You already got to marry up to him. Yeah, you're right, Bob. I don't want to have to try to marry up again. That ain't my odds aren't that good. But no, man, please share your stuff there. We're going to get a chance to shout from the mountaintops, how excited we are about you, more next week also. But thanks for being here, man. Thanks for giving us your time. That is the most valuable thing you could give anybody. And it's very generous of you to share some of that with us tonight.
Likewise. So. No, yeah, you guys were a ton of fun too. Thank you for having me and giving me 4 hours apiece. I made out positive. I gave 4 hours. I got 8.
There we go. And Mike, like you said, you do all the grunt work. You build the thumbnails.
Those low quality images you speak of. Yes, I do curate those.
Listen, people still show up every week to hang out with us.
Good label on the beer bottle, Mike. You get people to pick it up.
That's right.
Even if it's not their tastes, they pick it up because you put the work into the graphics.
There you go. That's right.
Yeah, and Lord knows I'm not everybody's taste. So we got to have Mike there making a really good label, so we could just like ambush you. You're like, wait a minute, hold on. What? I didn't order this. This is terrible. But no, Mike, you're killing it, man. Great list tonight, guys. Amazing topic. I mean, you set the topic up on a tee. And, hopefully other people found it interesting, but I don't care. It's our show. I love talking about it. I love hearing all those stories and stuff. So
no, you guys definitely hit it out of the park. I'm glad we all connected on that one because it is very clear that gaming has had a positive impact on all of us. And, I'm glad we can all connect over that.
It can do so much good in the world. All right. Bobby's getting us started. So, for the board game rundown, I've been Tim.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Dennis.
We'll see you next Wednesday, right, Mike?
That's right.
All right.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace out.